beginning of the end for you.
To the sky!
Bestowed upon you the power of the sun.
A mighty sword!
Strike while the iron's hot.
For Camelot! For Avalon!
Let the heavens rain! I am Ragnarok!
Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to the SMITE Pro League, the last week of phase number 3 as we go on to day 2. And after today, there's only 2 days left as Gormizer. I do have Trelly on the desk. We will talk to him in a little bit. First, of course, I want to talk to you and give a special shout out and thank you to Prime Gaming for being the title sponsor here of the SPL in Season 9. Of course, for those of you out there who are Prime members, we want to make sure that you're getting the best of your membership. And for those of you who aren't, I want to tell you what you're missing out on, because you could get not just the free monthly Twitch sub to whatever channel that you might want, you're also going to get free in-game content for certain games, as well as just free games every single month. Of course, we're halfway through November here, so if you're looking at it, you can get what you want for this month that's in there, as well as when the month resets over to December, there's a whole new reset on those games. Of course, you can get all of that as well as all of the other things like your free Amazon delivery and more. So become a Prime member if you're not, and if you're not, you should absolutely be looking at that one. So thanks to Prime Gaming once again for being the title sponsor of the SBL. It's Gort's Trelly, as I had said earlier. And Trelly, we've got a very interesting day ahead of us.
Oh, do we?
Because there's a lot of fun, I think, that can be had today. First off, we're starting with Kings and Leviathans, and to me, ignore standings, ignore anything else. That one just seems really, really fun. But of course, what these teams are fighting for right now, and what this is going to affect long-term, both this first set and the second set, is the road to Worlds. Because as you see, and as I said, we're at the end of Phase 3, which means in just a couple of weeks, we're going to the Phase 3 playoffs on November 30th, the day after my mom's birthday. So happy early birthday, Mom, I guess, but also happy playoffs to everybody who's going to be joining us for that one. Very fun. 4 teams are going to qualify for the World Championship right there, going to the quarterfinals for that one. 6 teams are going, so 2 are going to get eliminated, have to play a little bit later. Then we're going to find some SCC, SOC teams from Europe, from North America, from the 8th to the 11th, and then the 15th to the 18th. Then we'll be back in January for the group stage. The 2 teams that didn't qualify for playoffs, the 2 teams that were eliminated from playoffs from the SBL, and the 4 teams that come from the European and NA SCC/SOC will get thrown into a bracket. The top 4 of that go into the Worlds to fight the 4 that we find from the playoffs, and then it's Worlds. Then we find the champion themselves. And Trelly, it's getting a little more nerve-wracking, because when we looked at this at the beginning of Phase 3, November 30th was very far away.
Yep.
Now it's 12 days from now that kicks off. So that's a lot of fun and a lot of pressure, I think, on these teams starting to mount up. And that is what brings us to today, right? Of course, we're looking at playoffs, I think, first and foremost for a lot of these teams, because when you look at the way this week is going, for those of you curious, again, top 6 are going, and 6th place is still technically up for grabs. Valkyries, Bolts, depending on how the Valkyries play today, how the Bolts play tomorrow, could still end up in a position where that match on Sunday, the Valkyries and the Bolts playing each other, changes who is going to the playoffs and who isn't. Depends. The Valkyries need to win against the Dragons. The Bolts, for the Valkyries to have that contest, need to lose. But for the Bolts, if they can beat the Dragons tomorrow, they secure their spot. But there's also still an interesting area. If you're looking at the Leviathans, they've been doing really well, and we'll see the standings here in a second to be able to shake it out. They are secured first. Second's a different story, though. Dragons, depending on how these games go, if they end up losing out, and the Kings end up winning out for the rest of the week, could potentially be overtaken. If they tie it all, if the Kings win 1 and the Dragons lose 1, and they're both 9-4, and then they both end up, either 10-4 or 9-5, Dragons have the head-to-head. They get second place no matter what. But the Kings still have an opportunity here. It just depends on a lot of their matchups. But for the Kings, and for that conversation, at least for 2 and 3, it starts right now up against the Leviathans. And if you're wondering why second place is more important, first place more important, the top 2 seeds going into playoffs have to win 1 set and they get to go to Worlds. Everybody else, I think it's a minimum of 2, but for those guys, it's one less set that you have to worry about, have to stress about winning. Yeah, obviously seeding, discussion like that after the fact, getting into the top 4. Do you want to be number 1 seed going into Worlds? Historically, that's not been too great for you. Or do you want to be number 2? Things like that are going to be, I think, in the conversation when we get to playoffs. But for right now, the easiest path to Worlds is sometimes the best path to Worlds for you. So, theoretically, winning this for the Kings, hoping in their case for the Dragons to lose, it would maybe be a big deal. But if you're looking at the Leviathans, they're kind of set right now, Trelly. And when you look at this squad, again, a lot of changes, not even a lot of changes that have shifted them when you go back over the years. But scooping up Zabhan ended up working out really well for them last year. And then scooping up Haddix so far has worked out really well for them this year. They have 1 loss this phase, and it was the first game they played against the Warriors, first set they played against the Warriors with Haddix. And then you have to look at who this team is playing through, where their strengths are, because like Haddix, and we've talked about Zapman being like shot callers and actually sometimes kind of butting heads, I think in the comms is what they have said. But when you look at Panatom, who I believe, if I remember correctly, our MVP, most valuable primer for this week, and of course, Shinto in mid lane, who gobbles up every piece of farm that is at all available to him.
Yep.
I just think that this entire squad has a lot of strength going for him.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this team. You can't just, focus in one specific player, but Shinto is usually that guy, right? He's able to get that farm, as you were saying, and just translate that into these late-game team fights where he's like, hey, sit back, guys. I'll do the damage. You set up for me. You peel for me. And that's really what this kind of team relies on, right? If Shinto's having a bad game, I haven't seen it, right? It just doesn't happen. He's usually on point, and he's able to make those plays that his team needs. And we even got to sit down with him for an interview, and I remember it was just the way that he phrased it. He said, I make it happen.
He's got 4.05 KDA. Are you kidding me?
That's all he said, man, was I make it happen.
He makes it obvious.
That's a level of confidence I strive to have. We were just like, hey, Shinto, how'd you make that play? How'd you go for the... I just make it happen. That's it. He's confident, and he shows it. I mean, that's the thing. It's one thing to have that confidence, but to back it up consistently, he's on another level.
And not only that, I mean, you got to talk about someone who has been a huge impact player. And to put it into frame, we our fantasy that we've been running, Fantasy SPL League, I traded for Shinto. I had drafted Shinto, but Hindu had every other Leviathan, so I traded Shinto over to him because I thought it'd just be funny. And the joke was, the joke was definitely on me in that case. I've lost 170 points alone in that trade because Shinto is just so good. And not only that, but as a team, when we mentioned that, Hindu's 500 points ahead of anybody else. Like, we legitimately cannot catch him.
I just don't think it's fair that we let Hindu play when he literally writes the script for these
games.
Yeah,
I genuinely think what happens is he gets whatever draft he wants.
Yeah.
And then he starts altering things for us.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I got all the Leviathans. I guess they're going to go on the longest win streak of SPL history. Yeah. Like, why not? Like, let's just go for that.
It's just like casually, too, right?
Yeah.
Like, to the point where it's like, oh, wait, they're going to do this. And so far, that's actually where they're at, right? 11 in a row, potentially making it 12, 13 here if they can get this weekend to go their way. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch what they have to offer, but it's not going to be an easy ride for them, Trevor.
No, definitely not.
Because they are going to be dealing with the Kings on the other side. And the Kings recently making a change, right? You watched yesterday, maybe not their cleanest set to end it all. They pick up Hardcore over in the duo lane. You've got Genetics as well, who has been maybe one of the most prominent supports. So as a duo lane, I think that conversation becomes incredibly important. Also, worth mentioning, Hardcore on the Leviathans at the start of this year has now swapped to, bounced around, 2 more teams since then. So maybe you're not only running the SPL gauntlet of most competitive roles played, he's also trying to get most SPL teams played on, potentially.
I mean, at this point, I was going to say, like, oh, he's up against his former team, so is there even that animosity anymore? Yark just comes to play, man. He shows up looking lights out, but... the team as a whole, I think the Camelot Kings, they've been, as you said, they've been looking really good, but also I think they've been struggling in some areas. I think one of their more consistent parts as of recent, Big Man Tings has always been that mid laner they can look to and just sort of count on him to do the big damage, the same sort of style as Shinto, I feel. Not exactly the same, but they play similar roles in the sense of, hey, let's get a lot of farm. We're going to play that early game well, and you can count on me for that late game burst confirm, that late game plays that everyone, expects from their mid laner.
And he's got a 4.03. You're sitting right next to each other as far as KDA is concerned. And I think that's been a heavy topic, right? When you look at Shinto, I think that we've seen Shinto carry across metas no matter what. I think Big Man Tings falls into that same conversation. And right now, mid has shifted a little bit. We saw some AMC yesterday still, but like the Morrigan was a little more rare. We only got her one game of the 9 that was played. But you're talking about the Kings being able to put Big Man Tings back onto any sort of carry potential when it comes down to, like, especially with the Scylla buffs. It becomes a very, let's call it strong conversation in their favor, just because of the performance that he regularly brings.
I just like also the fact that we were able to talk to Genetics after their win yesterday, and he confidently said that he has the best backline in the league.
Yeah.
Meaning Yarkor and BMT are the hardest carry in his mind. And of course, he's a little biased, it's his own team, but I think they've got the plays to back it up. I mean, those fights were looking insane where, Yark was just dashing in consistently on the Cerno, showing that level of confidence, and BMT's like, I'm a monster. Like, I'm quite literally going to hit all of my Scylla ults and just pop off for you as well. So it's going to be a battle of the carries for sure in this one. I think some of the best support minds in the game on both of these teams, but also a battle of the carries nonetheless.
Yeah, and I actually like the way you frame that, because I think we have seen a lot of these frontliners be heavily important. Obviously, we highlighted the backline for a reason, because they have done so much. But when you look over towards like Genetics, and Wrong You, some of the best supports maybe just in the world, period, let alone in the SPL. But then, of course, you look over at who's accompanying them. You've got Variety, and over on the other side, you've got Haddix there. And I think that those two bring so much to the table. It is a very, very insane matchup for these two teams to go up against each other, and I'm excited to watch it. But of course, we got to hear from them to see what their thoughts were on this matchup prior to today.
In Phase 3, I feel like we've been improving a lot in our macro game. I feel like our mid game was so weak, and if your mid game is weak in SPL or competitive games, I feel like you're most likely to get a stomp or losing the game. So I feel like we've been working on our trio and our macro.
In Phase 3, I think we struggled a little bit. I think the last 2 weeks especially has not been, our greatest games ever. We've not really been a team to like expand into what the teams are playing, like set mid, for example. And I think we realized that, and I think we've managed to, turn it around and really like try to expand like the meta and how we want to play the game. So although we started shaky and in the middle it was shaky, I think we're coming off to a good end to it.
For next week, I feel like we can chill a little bit. Maybe we can like try something like here against the Bolt. We let Jamoy out just to see how it goes. It went bad, won our game, but yeah, I feel like we're gonna like play as confident as we've been doing and try to get the W.
I do think we are one of the teams that are able to break the streak. I think they kind of looked a bit shaky in the most recent games, like the most recent sets. They haven't really looked as dominant. They've kind of like looked a little bit like us, like coming back to the game, managing to find like a good team fight or an FG steal. I think us two, in terms of how we've been playing recently, are kind of similar. And I think we can be the ones to come out on top, come back into form and really like bring it to them.
Exciting to see what these teams have to offer, specifically locked on to what Wrong You had said, which is that they felt like their mid game was weak, of all things. And admittedly, we've kind of seen that. Their early game has strengthened up. Leviathans late game is what we've talked about for 3 years straight. I don't think we need to harp on that much longer. And, when we talk about the Kings, we talk about the late game, but that mid game has been very unfortunate for them, maybe not as strong as they would like. And so Trelly, I think that's honestly where we could maybe see this matchup kind of break in favor for the Kings, is if they can get online a little faster. We already know both of these teams are really good at playing not only the map, but for farming. When it comes down to we maybe have some of the best farmers in the league on these two teams alone. So this is, I mean, I think they have a lot of similarities that are maybe going to cause some heads to butt in this one. And we'll find out if it starts here in game number 1 for picks and bans. It'll be the Leviathans taking that first pick. And Trelly, this is where things, again, can get shaken up. Mainly because this week, there was a big patch.
Yes.
And when I say a big patch, I mean it was a big patch, right? If you go look at it, and again, for everybody who's wondering, it was a lot of, like, mostly small-ish changes, right?
Yep.
Hey, this is like 50 to 100 gold more expensive or less expensive. Hey, this got 10 more or less power. Like, grand scheme, some of them were just small little buffs and little nerfs to maybe adjust where things were. But then there were some, like Scylla, where you get 20% bonus damage from Crush onto all minions, including jungle minions. And suddenly she goes from nobody's even looking that way at other mages to top ban against the Kings here.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I expected some threat towards the Scylla, but certainly not first ban up against the Camelot Kings when the Leviathans are first pick. Like, that is not something I would have expected. I think BMT had a phenomenal performance on the Scylla, and it seems like the Leviathans watched that match and they said, yeah, we don't got answers for that. Let's just get rid of it. Right? We don't want to deal with that. Probably a smart call. Focus out BMT as much as possible. The Yark ban as well coming through with the Cernanos, but focus in the backline of the Camelot Kings. I mean, that seems to be the call. Of course, with both of these support players, the Yemoja had to be taken away. That goes without saying. That was something that you, especially when Wrong Yu is in first pick, you know, you don't want to be giving that one up. But besides that, the Leviathan's giving a lot of respect to the carries on the side of the Camelot Kings. And it looks like focusing on Wrong Yu, and more specifically also that dodge Yu, which is just very strong right now.
So here's what I was going to say, because I was curious if you would think this is as funny as I do. But most of the time, versus the Kings, top 3 bans have been Ymir, Yemoja, Naja, right? And admittedly, one of those was taken away pretty quickly that the Leviathans wouldn't have needed to ban it, but their first pick, they're not going to need to worry too much about it. The top 3 bans against the Leviathans, you'll never guess. Yemoja, Daji, Ymir. In that order. Yemoja and Daji are tied, because they usually go hand in hand. And so it makes things, I think, fun, at least there, for the top bans. Ishtar, that was another conversational point I wanted to bring up to you, because last week, one of the most picked gods by, like, a long shot, I mean, literally double the next amount. Well, 23 games. The next highest was 12 for anybody else. So making it through a ton, getting picked a ton. Last week hadn't won a whole lot, but overall has been doing incredibly well, and it feels like a very solid, especially with Kernanos gone.
Yep.
Maybe the top hunter available to anybody.
And it looks like just both of these teams are going to focus on getting those hunters, the Ishtar into the Cupid, and the Kings are going to grab that Terra. Another pick that is constantly banned away from genetics, so getting to grab that one, probably something they're happy about. And I see a Chronos hover. You know, I was wondering if something like this would come about, and it's just a hover, so we don't have to harp on it just yet, but there were a lot of buffs to not only Chronos, but his itemization. I'm curious if the Leviathans actually feel like this is a pick worth going to. Usually when it's this long of a hover, it doesn't get locked in. No, usually it's, let's hover it and then talk about why it's bad, but they're not going to talk about why it's bad.
They made you a liar. How do you feel?
I just said usually. I covered my bases. I've been doing this long enough to know that you never give 100% certainty. And this is what I was curious about, because again, Chronos got a lot of buffs, as well as, you know, Gilded Arrow got some buffs, Sands of Time, the itemization, even Chronos' pendant got some buffs. Maybe you don't build it on him, but hey, it got buffed.
And Trelly, I'm happy you're here with me.
I am.
Because there's been technically one god that is available for play all year that has not been picked up until now.
I'm guessing it was Chronos.
And it was Chronos. So I can delete him off the list.
Is that all of them?
And we have, except for technically Maui, who is not even available competitively yet.
So Season 9, we have seen
played
every single
god now.
Wow.
Now let's talk about the bans list. No joke, I do actually have a Gods Not on the list. But yes, Chronos was the last one to be played. And you had mentioned it, but like a lot of the buffs, admittedly, because it gave him some attack speed early on.
Yep.
Like I think his late game, it's still 35% that he gets as the buff, but like early it jumped to like, I believe it was 25% base. Plus he got, you know, if you're thinking about his passive or like clock that ticks over and over around for his AO2, his second ability there. It's the third section where you get increased magical power. He just got a blanket buff to that, and base damage, I think, on his 3.
He got a lot of buffs.
Yeah, he got a lot of buffs to hit real hard. And guess what? Chronos already hit really hard late game. If you're playing the Leviathans, or as the Leviathans against the Kings, you have to imagine, I think it's 36 minutes is when his passive fully gives him that extra, like, whatever, it's like 100 some odd, 180, I want to say, maybe that's too much, power that he gets from, like, the time marching on throughout the game. I would heavily bet that whether this game is 2 or 3, or the set is 2 or 3 games, but each one at least hits that 36, right? It just feels right between these two teams. And Kronos wants to play that alongside the Cthulhu. It feels like the Leviathans are gearing with an Ishtar, Cthulhu, Kronos top 3 to play against the Leviathans, or not the Leviathans, against the Kings for the long haul.
It does seem like that's the call, and
It's 125 magical power after 37 and a half minutes.
There you go.
I was like almost kind of close in both of those numbers.
I mean, I would say
Thanks, Billy.
I would say you got it regardless, but I'm a little bit worried about the Leviathans draft thus far because I don't see the early pressure, right? They've got the late game, as you've been talking about, but what are they going to get active early? The Camelot Kings, they take away that Susano, something Panatom likes to go to when he needs some early pressure. And it looks like the Hunbats is going to be taken away from Twig, but also works as a band towards Leviathans as well in that slot. So the Erlong Shen, a pick that I think both of these junglers like to go to for that early pressure, hasn't been performing too well, but this is what I was waiting for. When are we going to see something interesting? That could go to Variety in the solo lane, or it could go over to Twig in the jungle, but Rat is going to bring some of that early pressure I was talking about, not over to the Leviathans, but over to the Camelot Kings.
Now, we've seen Rat, if you go back a couple of weeks, go back and watch the EU SCC. It was like, I mean, almost a must ban against some of those guys. Played a lot in the jungle. I can't remember the last time I saw Twig play this when Variety's on the squad, but would you prefer to see it on Twig, or do you like it in Variety's hands with a matchup, I guess in this case, up against the Cthulhu?
I mean, I just want to see Twig get active on something in the early, and Rat can do that, but because, as you said, because it's Variety, it's probably going over that solo lane. I don't think it has a fantastic matchup into Cthulhu. If you can just clear the wave and run away, that's what you want to do. Like, you don't want to sit there and try to poke out. You just want to say, okay, I'm going to proxy the wave, and I'm going to be trying to ult over to mid lane. That's what solo lane Rat brings. So if that's the call here, then I do like it if the Camelot Kings decide to go towards that. But looking on the other side,
Gilgamesh.
that is going to help with the early pressure. The Gilgamesh that also receives some buffs, as well as the Cabrakan. That's what I was looking for. I was wondering where this pressure was going to come from.
You're missing the most important thing, Gilgamesh.
They got the Leviathans.
In the digital loot pack right now, you can get the Leviathans skin for Gilgamesh, their world skin, which you have to imagine Panatom's feeling really happy about.
I mean, he better
having that in the game.
I was going to say, he better be using it. I'm going to be upset if he's not. Wait, it just came out, though. He probably can't use it yet, actually.
I have no idea. And I could probably rush to pull it up. They only got one pick left. So instead, we'll wait and see if somebody else tells us. Cabrakan is what I want to latch onto, because you had said the Gilgamesh may be someone who gets hands-on. And actually, with the Xing Shinlock in, it is going to be Rat going over to Twig instead of Variety.
Love that.
So that's going to be, like you said, what you wanted to see. Especially when I'm looking at, look, I see Kronos and Cthulhu. I don't think you're seeing a lot of fight super early from the side lanes on the Leviathans, even with some of the early buffs to Kronos. But I see the Cabrakan, and suddenly, with the Gilgamesh alongside it, like, you are absolutely trying to run some people down.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's what the Leviathan's plan was here. I mean, again, Gilgamesh did get some massive buffs. Extra HP 5 to his Scepter, the first ability on those auto attacks, as well as decreased cooldown on his 2. The drop kick is going to be coming up a lot more frequently. It helps out with the farm. And remember, this is a pick that Panatom loved last year.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. Whenever the Gilgamesh was open, he was probably going to it. So I'm excited to see if Gilgamesh is back, if he's just kind of half back, or if he's really back. Either way, it's going to bring that early pressure, and that's what the Leviathans desperately needed. Because trying to get an Ishtar and a Kronos online, it's not the easiest thing in the world. You need some sort of pressure in the jungle to make sure that they can just farm effectively and they're not getting pressured. The second I saw the Rat pick up, and we knew that it was going to Captain Twig, you realize the Camelot Kings are thinking the same thing. Hey, we can pressure them. They've went for these hard carries that aren't online yet.
Yeah.
So I like that they've tried to balance that out.
Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I missed a week and a half of SBL, so
Yeah.
there's a good chance that what I'm about to say might not be true, but we've seen Kronos, if he's played, again, this is the first game that he's had all year, so that's a surprise in and of itself. He's almost always duo lane.
Yes.
Although Zeros in the SCC, again, I have to give a little shout out to him, because he, for some reason, keeps playing him in mid. Ishtar, we've seen, not exclusively, but I feel like almost only in the duo lane.
Yeah.
Do you think Ishtar mid works better than Kronos mid, that's the way that they want to split it up? Or do you think the buffs to Kronos make him work in mid?
I think that they both have potential to play in either lane, and I don't think it matters too much in that sense.
Okay.
But because I see Shinto and I want him on this hard carry, you know, I think it'll be a better matchup because if Cupid gets ahead, it doesn't matter if you try to rewind. You're probably getting 100 to 0. If you're letting that Fields of Love go off, you're probably dying before the rewind goes off. Each char's got a great matchup into the Cupid. You know, she can just use her ultimate, they can trade ults, and they're going to box just fine. So I'm hoping Kronos in the mid, just because I think it'd be cool, but at this point I think it's interchangeable. They both have decent clear.
Well, the buff to his 3, suddenly his clear gets
Yep.
a little bit better. I guess we'll find out here in game number 1, because it's Dave and Mifflin standing by to take us through.
That's right. Now, on a precursor of this game, this is new information. On the second, Miff,
Okay.
before this set, Zatman tweeted, new Hunter build incoming in SPL. So we'll see.
Yo, my man does not lie.
Those ear cuffs are so gleaming. It's
Dude.
unbelievable. So, all right. We'll see what Zatman can get done.
Let me
We're
see
gonna-
those stats one more time,
Yeah.
Doug. That's actually like really decent stats for tier 2. 20 power, 15% attack speed. MP5 a little bit less meaningful for hunters, I think. Generally, you prefer to have the passive from like Death's Toll if you're worried about mana, but 15% attack speed with your auto attacks hitting as hard as Ishtar's do.
Yep.
With those lob autos in the early, I don't know. I kind of like it.
Could be onto something. We'll see if it ends up paying off for Zatman. Then Shinto over in mid picks up Kronos. And you should have seen, I guess you did see, but viewers at home should have seen how excited Gore was when
Ecstatic.
the last pick. I mean, we're really getting down to the wire here. The last weekend of SPL, then only a few more tournaments left, and then Worlds. And we just now lock in the last god yet to be played that's available in the Kronos Myth. I know you have some thoughts on Kronos.
Do I? Like in particular?
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty popular clip of you harshing on Kronos when it was being played in the SEC.
Oh, you're talking about Griff's Chrono. No, that was me harshing on a guy who couldn't hit anything, not the god.
So it wasn't anything to do with Kronos.
No.
So you're in on Kronos.
Yeah, I think Kronos like is always one buff away from being top of the meta. I think that's kind of true of the majority of magical ADCs, where Soul's one buff away from dominating. You know, Kronos in the exact same situation. Nice drop kick from Panatom. Lines up a good deal of poke there. And the buffs that Kronos received, I think namely around Accelerate, now getting 10% bonus at tier 1. You don't generally max out that ability, so having 25% at the first level, pretty good.
Dash in from Twig, but a drop kick from Panatom. But it looks like the damage onto the Gilgamesh a bit more than is being returned, and Shinto will block the last couple of autos. Keep the Gilgamesh just fine. Now, Panatom loves this Gilgamesh pick. Such a strong combination for the Atlantis Leviathans. Also worth kind of recontextualizing this individual set. Technically, the Camelot Kings 2 wins away from getting second seed with 2 games remaining. Jade Dragons also have 2 sets remaining with the extra 1 game in hand. So a Jade Dragons win or a Camelot Kings loss at this point effectively seals the deal on second seed. The Leviathan's just playing for win streak and trying out some new compositions and apparently new builds. That's a really good spot to be getting towards the end of the phase. They've been very, very difficult to deal with, Myth, and a lot of that has been the new solo laner. They added Haddix to this squad, seems to have slotted right on in. They're going to give him maybe one of his strongest picks in the Cthulhu, and the question always ends up being, is there enough damage, enough shred to burn down a late-game Cthulhu?
I don't have much faith in their ability to do it on the Camelot Kings. It's not exactly a Cthulhu burn composition. Good red buff steal from Zatman. Just in the face of Big Man Tings. Gets the red, walks out, takes just about no damage. Wrong U. Just being as annoying as possible as well. Genetics forced to use that hog. But when you look at the 5-man core of the Camelot Kings, who's doing it? It's not Variety. He's not going to be going a full damage build. Has gone for something slightly off-kilter. Generally, it's Book of Thoth in first slot for Jing Chen solo, but regardless, won't be able to quite deal with the Cthulhu. You've only got the single Hunter, so who else is really going to do it? I don't think Big Man Tings on the Agni's got the DPS either.
Right.
The strategy to me from the Camelot Kings is deal with the peripheries. Haddix goes into Descent into Madness. Let's try and blow up Shinto while he's walking forward to make use of the space created by the Cthulhu, or catch Zatman in the jungle. And they've got, the Camelot Kings that is, they've got very good dive. They've got the ability to kind of walk past Cthulhu in a lot of these fights. Twig, Genetics, Variety have got enough damage to deal with some of the squishier targets, but if the Leviathans are able to rotate into these late game team fights with a lead, Cthulhu damage output going to be a little bit too much to ignore. So the answer, I think, for the Camelot Kings is put pressure on the lane, make sure hi-rez is behind, and then ignore him in the team fight.
And that's what Captain Twig hoping to do. The Ratatosker makes its way over to the solo lane. Descent into Madness should just be about it for this gank. Forcing that ult, maybe enough for the Kings, especially if they want to re-gank here in just a moment. Twig at level 5 adds a little semi-global presence. Good you talk about late game, Myth. That's something you got to look at, scaling from both teams here as well. Two teams whose play styles lean towards later in the game. The Kings love to play objective-minded. Atlantis Leviathans, great at late game team fighting. Probably get some value out of the Chronos passive. You're going to scale up and get almost a full tier 3 worth of extra power by the end of the game. Big Man Ting's going to get drop kicked by Panatom. Beads used. Winds of Shamash used as well,
Whoa.
but Big Man Ting survives, and it's a Ratatosker regank over in mid. And the rewind from Shinto, good enough. Big Man Ting's got to be careful here, but so does Captain Twig. And it's Chaos incarnate in the mid lane. Panatom able to strike for first blood.
Yeah, Twig was just not prepared for that rotation from Rongyu, the wall well placed, and Twig falls down pretty easily afterward. I like the idea, though. Tries to dunk on a Shinto, but Shinto a bit too quick with that rewind. Able to see CMU in the knockup. Has phenomenal rewind placement at that, just completely removed from danger by jumping into the jungle. And from there, the Leviathan's able to win out cleanly. It is worth noting that Panatom, just before that fight, was able to pick up his passive on that right mid camp, gets himself a katana in second slot. Not sure it's one that Panatom would like upgrade, but still a tier 1 katana going into an engagement like that, pretty decent stats.
Now the Leviathans, what can they do with this extra first blood? Panatom has been so active early in this game. We've seen the Gilgamesh everywhere. That's important for the Kings. Remember, you're still fighting for second seed, but this is a team very confident regardless whether you have to win 1 or 2 or 3 sets at Phase 3 playoffs to go to Worlds. This is a team feels destined for some type of Worlds run this year, especially with some roster changes. Feel like Yark could be the answer to some consistency. But with that, I think you got to look towards the rest of the team. Captain Twig, I think, in need of a really good, consistent set here and a good rest of the weekend for the Camelot Kings to end out this phase. Potentially Ratatosker, a good option, but outside of slowing down Haddox, who's already at level 7, and Shinto with the rewind, Zapman, maybe could be a good target for the Rat.
Yeah, Ratatosker's got plenty of decent targets. The only one that's going to be a struggle would be Shinto. Zapman, though,
Oh
just
my God.
falls down.
Yeah, Zapman, a great target. That came out of nowhere. The Camelot Kings dual lane synergizes perfectly and drops the hammer on Zapman, who's unable to get the ultimate out. Didn't have a chance to use the beads. That's just good old-fashioned detonate damage between Yark and Genetics.
I don't know about doesn't have the chance to use the beads. That's the Zapman classic,
Yeah,
right?
that's
The old
true.
Z-Man is just
didn't
going to hold
matter,
on to it.
right.
He's like, look, I'll have it for the next rotation. He's used to being a streamer. He's used to getting focused. So having the beads for the next team fight, I suppose, what he's got his eyes set on. Feels like he probably could have survived that had he just, walked out. But instead, sticks around, takes damage from quite literally every single ability the Camelot Kings had in the lane. So maybe a missed opportunity for the Leviathans, but one that I'm sure they're used to.
It could have been the Ishtar potentially a bit behind in that lane. Hefty amount of stacks behind on the Devourer's Gauntlet. That's a short-term problem, though, and Zapman, used to being ganked, as you say, could catch up just fine. It's blue buff invade now for the Atlantis Leviathans. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel from Variety confirms the buff. Actually sends Captain Twig out as well. Genetics collapsed on a bit, but he'll dash away A-okay. I imagine these later game jungle team fights, the amount of walls they're going to be getting tossed up. Going to be a bit hectic, Myth. You got Genetics and the walls up and the stuns there. Rongyu with his ultimate. Lock in a few members of the Camelot Kings.
Yeah, maybe the Kings consider picking themselves up a Phantom Shell. Rongyu having his wall tied to his ultimate means that Phantom Shell will generally just get more value than it would against like a Ymir or something like that. Big Man Tings finding out quickly that Shinto does a whole lot of damage already, that first ability. Swinging for upwards of 300
God, again?
as... Well, this time he used beads.
He used beads?
He used beads.
Well, it's a good thing that he had him from last time, right? Or
He's feeling so validated, I bet. He's like, well, I used beads this time and I still died. Might as well
Right.
just hold on to it.
Well, it's a great look for the Kings and Twig. The Ratatosker fell early for first blood and now able to find a gank. On to Zapman. You figured it might be a good target. Jump right on top of the Ishtar. And also Yark. Look, I think if you're the Kings, this week, it would have been expected if it took Genetics and Yark a bit of time to really get things going. Even Yark and Twig and those types of scenarios would have taken some time to get things going. But the early goings of game one here, Miff, I think Kings fans have a lot to be excited about. Seems like the Cupid has slotted in nicely in Yarkor.
Yeah, I mean, Yarkor is just ridiculous in the laning phase. He is one of the few hunters in the league right now that is continually looking for opportunities to solo out his enemy, and he brings that to every single lane he's played in. For the most part, it feels like a lot of players have their eyes set for mid-game. They've got their eyes set for, you know, slowing it down a little bit or not incurring any risk. Yarkor doesn't care about the risk incurred. He'll sit on your tower line if he thinks he's going to be able to drop you to 10% or send you back to base in a body bag or in a TKO. And I feel like it's legitimately catching a lot of his lane opponents off guard. Zatman's probably not used to the amount of pressure that Yarkor is tossing out here. And the Camelot Kings are playing well around it. Every single time Yarkor is sitting on that tier 1, look at the jungle. You'll spot either Genetics hovering nearby or the jungler hovering nearby. As I say it, he doesn't exactly have that assistance this time, but Yarkor won to play intelligently, spots Zatman in the jungle, says, I haven't got the team near me, backs himself up.
Yark probably strong enough at this point, though.
He could take
to
probably
1v1, right? 1v1, maybe 1v2, depending on who it is. Got the full executioner compared to just the light blade for Zatman.
Well, you got to compare the I don't even know the name of that tier 2. Tier 2 Griffin wings over there.
Yeah, I guess, right. The gleaming ear cuffs. Remember, those
I
ear
won't
cuffs
remember.
they're so gleaming. Right. You got to compare the tier 2. Zatman not feeling that bad, maybe. So Pyromancer gets pulled by the Kings. The Leviathans show up with one less, but that's still enough to force the Kings back just a bit. It looks like wrong you. Want to separate out Genetics not only here in the mid lane, but later on in the game, if throughout these team fights. Anti-heal so important against Terra alone, but you've also got Yark on the Cupid staying up that team quite nicely. And this is what you got to keep looking out for. It's a bit of that damage from this Chronos. Shinto, Book of Thoth, Divine Ruin, little flat pen in there. Already chunking out some targets.
Yeah, and the standard mage build for Chronos, it has just gotten so much stronger now with the buff to his third ability. He just does legitimately so much damage. One of the pie slices of his second ability gives him 35% additional power as well come late game. Just an incredible amount of burst that you're going to be able to pick up. So I've got my eyes set on him, man. I feel like Shinto has had a very good early game, better than you could generally ask for from a Chronos in mid. That's why we used to see him in the dual lane when Chronos was meta, is because it's so much more difficult to gank there.
Right.
Shinto takes a mid, says nobody's coming my way, and so far he's just been right. Captain Twig has been playing spoiler to Panatom's ganks rather than putting pressure on Shinto himself. And they've allowed this Chronos now, the Camelot Kings that is, to hit level 12 without even really having to use his relics defensively. I think that even if they get the Gold Fury here, the Leviathans have kept it at least close enough that Shinto's going to be able to fight into the late game just fine.
Zatman won't go for the steal. Camelot Kings grab themselves the Gold Fury and maybe a kill onto Zatman. That's a solo for Captain Twig. Zap falls to 0-3. The New Age Hunter build. I don't know if it's build-based or focus-based from the Camelot Kings, but Zatman falling by the wayside a couple times, and now with Interceptor, extra Gold Fury, Yarkor in a power position here. Should pull maybe another level ahead and a little bit of extra gold ahead of Zatman as well. And this Ishtar's got a hill to climb.
She does, but Zatman's not the win condition.
Sure.
It is almost entirely contingent on Haddix and Shinto in these team fights. Of course, you want your Hunter to survive and be able to deal with these structures, but even if he doesn't, Chronos is like the best late-game god at dealing with structures and objectives as well. I think it is great for the Camelot Kings to be able to, lean on this lane, play around Yarkor, put him in a winning position. And Yarkor very well could be the win condition for the Kings. But it just feels like the Leviathan's mid laner has still gotten away with so much. A level lead over an Agni at this point in the game is just tough.
Oh no, is it going to happen to Zatman again? Doesn't have beads.
Got him.
Another kill for Yarkor onto Zatman. 0-4 on the Ishtar. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're Zap, you're communicating to your team. You're saying, guys, they're here again. They use this, this, and this on me. Let's see if we can get something going elsewhere. And so Panatom's hoping to find over in the mid lane. Wins the Shamash onto Tings and Twig, and a drop kick onto the Agni. Followed up by some walls. There's your damage, and it's Panatom leading the charge. Shinto will get the beads off of Captain Twig. Stun doesn't connect.
The autos hit hard when they do.
Yeah, but Shinto doesn't look like he's done yet. Maybe it's the Camelot Kings in on the chase. The rewind will come out in time, and Captain Twig ultimately run down, and you're spot on here, Myth. Leviathans fighting around their mid laner, and this Kronos is melting the Camelot Kings. Just needs a bit of time.
Haddix trying to buy some space as Yarkor, the raid boss, starts to rotate his way forward. Doesn't have access to the Fields of Love, so won't be able to lock down Haddix any longer. And this is what I was talking about earlier. You don't necessarily need your Hunter alive. He's hitting towers for 171 already. That was 5 auto attacks, and the tower was taken off the map immediately. The Camelot Kings have done a phenomenal job of shutting down Zapman. I'm just not sure it was the right target selection when Shinto is free farming the map. And even in the engagement, Shinto hit like what, 2 auto attacks and two ticks of his first ability, if even. That's still like 1,500 damage because he's got so much farm on him. And now when he connects the stun with this next item he's picked up, Polynomicon, that burst that's already feeling a bit ridiculous has only just gotten better.
Zapman, again, the focus of genetics. It's a fantastic mid lane engagement for the Atlantis Leviathans. That'll bring this game right back close to even where the Camelot Kings had pulled, call it 2,000 or so gold ahead, halved now by the Leviathans. And again, Panatom has remained active, Myth. We haven't seen this Gilgamesh at all this phase. The first time we've seen it. Seems fitting that it's in Panatom's hands. Still does same old Gilgamesh things. Great initiation with the dropkick, Winds of Shamash just to slow those targets down.
He brought back his Worlds build, Dave.
Yeah, that's what he was building.
Goodness.
It's worked. Zapman again, though. That takes some damage between Genetics and Yarkor. Fields of Love. Uses just the ultimate this time. Now susceptible, though, to a jump in from Captain Twig, who is spotted out by Panatom. The Leviathans look like they want to help Zapman. And Captain Twig might need to leave because Shinto is here. He'll zoom himself forward, blink in from Panatom, and an up-down forces Twig up. And it looks like the Ratatoskr will be just fine.
Great up-down timing from Panatom just to avoid the stun from Captain Twig. Keeps that pressure up, forces out the ultimate from the Rat. Good stuff from the Leviathans, rotating with aggression. Shinto now, I think, pretty close to critical mass, has got so much damage output that wherever he is, the Leviathans have got threat. Fortunately for the Camelot Kings, even in being forced out, because of the state of the map, there's not much the Leviathans can do with it. Zapman doesn't really have the levels or the items to put pressure on Yarkor, 3 levels down, so he'll just fizzle out there. Fury wasn't up just yet either, so the Leviathans just have to reset completely back to neutral. Pyromancer and Gold will be spawning very shortly. I don't imagine we see the Leviathans prioritize Pyromancer again.
Oh my goodness. Do you think Zapman finishes the item, or do you think he...
I don't think so. I don't know how Griffin Wing interacts with Ishtar's first ability either. If the lobs are going instantly, or the snipe shots are like hit scan, I hope he does. I just want to see it for science.
I agree.
You're 0-4. It doesn't matter if your build's bad, man.
Right, your first seed.
Yeah, your first seed. Let's see it.
Give us some science. Maybe he'll hear us down the hall. We got to hope that he gets to a gold point, though, where he can afford to finish the item. The Leviathans have pulled out the Pyromancer, and the Camelot Kings look like their answer.
400
is right around the Primal Fury. Compared to, what am I looking at, 180 or so from the Cupid? Yeah, Shinto melts the objective. Bit lower now, but Zapman's rotated in.
He's not worth anything.
The Leviathans steal away the Primal Fury, and Zapman will die for it. He's laughing at him, and why not? The Leviathans get both neutral objectives. Zap falls to 0-5, but his death cry is a laugh taunt after stealing away the Primal.
And because he was 0-4 going into that, whoever just killed him got 20 gold. Like, they got nothing for that. They got pennies. And he walks away with your objective when the Leviathans had already taken Pyromancer on the right side. It doesn't reflect in the charts too badly. The Camelot Kings have still got a little bit of leeway in their lead, but by the nature of the Leviathans draft and how hard it scales in the late game, that's a mental crusher. Yeah. If I'm Zapman there, I am so absolutely pleased with myself. And if I'm the Camelot Kings, you're starting to have the conversation, or at least the thought of, well, our late game team fight might not be good enough.
Uh-oh. Haddix in trouble. No, he's got to set into madness. He'll shrug off the ultimate from Yark just fine. Panatom has rotated in as well, but now the Cthulhu has taken a bit too much damage. Zapman's going to rotate Out of base, Variety still looking for Haddix, who will de-transform, and Whirlwind of Rage and Steel was simply too early. Wrongyu, though, now has been jumped on. Shinto and Zap, they've been zoned out by Genetics, and that's been a difference maker in this fight. As Panatom left running, Zapman with a dodge, Shinto gets one on a fadeaway, but the Camelot Kings have simply team fought better here in a 3-for-1.
Yeah, Leviathans were not ready for that engagement. Haddix gets dropped down to 10% before the fight even starts. TP's in.
Yeah.
Doesn't have much. Blink's good to avoid the stun. Dash to avoid the CC. Big Man Ting still in the chase, connects his own. But I gotta think Haddix is out of here.
Yep.
Maybe the Camelot Kings can reset themselves to the Giant, but with Shinto nearby, he's got a pretty decent threat just in steal potential. But I think the Kings are right to do this. You have to make this play.
I want to see it. With Shinto stepping forward, 40 seconds away from his ultimate. The Fire Giant is slow. Variety's going to take a heap of damage here, but when the Fire Giant's this low, now Shinto's got to decide, am I using my abilities to kill Variety?
He's missed too much.
Or try to steal it away. It's going to be a Whirlwind of Rage and Steel out of Variety, and that'll secure the FG for the Camelot Kings. So despite where the Camelot Kings funneled all their pressure, we're wondering how that would affect these later on game team fights. It's the Camelot Kings who win a big one, get the Fire Giant, and regain control of game number 1, Myth. And that was just so difficult, that last fight. I think you got to rewind to it. I mean, it was so hard for Shinto and Zapman to find their pressure in that fight. And Genetics did a great job of zoning them out.
Yeah, I think that fight goes catastrophic for the Leviathans, if not for Panatom's ultimate placement as well. Shinto very narrowly escapes thanks to the wins of Shamash. Had he died, the Camelot Kings would have gotten so much more, and very easily at that. So, great play from the Kings to bounce back after a crushing defeat around that Gold Fury and Pyromancer trade. Grab themselves the Fire Giant by getting the jump on Haddix in the jungle. But the team fight of the Leviathans is still incredibly strong. Kronos is not strong on base defense, though. Not really the best at keeping these waves out. Doesn't exactly have AoE damage. We saw it there. When you're aware of the Kronos looking at you, it's pretty easy to avoid some of these abilities. Shinto whiffs a whole lot up against Variety. And that situation is going to continue to rear its head as we start to approach these Phoenixes, these tier 2s as well. But it seems to me the Leviathans had considered a bit of a base race or a split push situation. Shinto makes short work of towers so long as he's there. It's up to the Camelot Kings to generate threat and pull him away.
Man, the Kings have so many towers to work through. This is going to be a back-breaking first Fire Giant of the game, you have to imagine, unless the Leviathans can find their fight. But it's Wrongyu who's been caught out by the Camelot Kings. He'll drop his ultimate, but is it too little too late? Survives a bit longer than intended, but Wrongyu drops all the same. It's a stun onto Genetics. Zapman simply doesn't have enough damage to finish off this kill, and Captain Twig deals the 7th death of the game to Zapman. Yark on a double. Panatom still in and fighting. Shinto still full HP on the back end of a rewind. But it's just Shinto, just Panatom against 4 of the Kings.
Variety would love to prevent Panatom from backing here, so he'll be walking all the way back. Shinto says, I can't defend the bird on my own, resets it, and instead tries to find the 1v1 up against Variety. Not a 1v1 anymore with Big Man Ting's nearby. There goes the beats from the Kronos, and without rewind as well, would be very easy for the Leviathans to jump on him, or the Kings rather, to jump on a Shinto. But that's twice now where the Leviathans were not given an opportunity to team fight. This time, instead of Haddix getting caught on right side, it's Wrongyu on that left side jungle. The Camelot Kings, that's one phenomenal answer to not having as strong a 5-on-5 engagement is to just prevent it from happening with picks. The Leviathans need to group up if they want any odds in these team fights.
I mean, Zapman is still 4 levels behind, and so if you're getting a pick on Wrongyu, technically, yes, it's a 4v5, but it's also a 4-level deficit hunter that's one of those 4. Just has so much ground to catch up. It's been difficult for Zap to find that farm now that all the pressure has been pushing against his side of the map. Oni Fury on the back pedal from the Camelot Kings. Fantastic first Fire Giant for the Camelot Kings, who will now pull out the Pyromancer. Shinto, though, ever persistent, is going to remain close by. This is a 3 versus 2, but will quickly become an odd-numbered fight as the Camelot Kings rejoin their team here on the right side of the map. But no, just the Leviathan securing the Pyro, so a small victory in a sea of recent losses for the Leviathans. They're not going to have to deal with Oni fire minions on the left side of the map.
I think Zapman can just push forever, and if he loses a fight, if someone comes over and ganks him, he's not winning an engagement up against Captain Twig, but just spending this time farming, I think so important for this Ishtar. Twig has got eyes for Zap. Stun connects. Beads are good.
Twig locked in place. Suddenly, Zapman dealing a little bit of damage. Twig not expecting that. Beads and ult off of Zapman, though. Twig still doesn't have beads, so he didn't get to use those. And, of course, you're going to hold on to your ult in that situation. So, for the first time, we've seen an 0-7 Ishtar win a damage trade.
Yeah, Zap said it's not that easy, Twig, all right? I
No
know
one kills
0-7.
me 7 times
Eight
in a row.
times.
8 times in a row and gets away with it. Still needs some time to
Well, he's
farm
sticking
things
around.
up, though. Zapman is still here. Now at half HP. I mean, Twig can just close this gap.
Good Aegis.
Off of Zap. Yes, you avoid the damage. Just wondering if Twig was just going to go up and over and dunk down. Here he goes, up onto the branch. One across.
Gotta hit it.
Oh, Zapman dodges it, and now can Zap turn it around? No, he can't. Tried to buy some time for Panatom to get here. And now the Leviathans just hoping for a damage trade, a kill trade. Hoping to go 1-for-1. Another dodge out, though, but Shinto from over the wall equalizes out this trade. Camelot Kings, they send 3, and now it's Panatom who's caught out.
Panatom can buy a little bit of time by pathing away as Variety lines up against Shinto. Will fall down here.
What is happening?
Surprised to see the Camelot Kings rotate that many in numbers. Shinto, you win this 1v1, dog. You absolutely win that 1v1. Hit him.
Well, he didn't hit the stun.
That's big.
And so Variety will leap on out. Maybe that's a... Although I guess we did know where the rest of the Kings
We knew
were.
for a fact where the rest of the Kings
Right.
were. They were dancing on Panatom's corpse.
Poor guy. Camelot Kings will send their way right back over to the FG, though. What a weird tug-of-war of a game we've had. Zapman's 0-8, but there's still all these win conditions for the Leviathans, but it's been a clean-ish team game from the Camelot Kings on some of their fighting, and it looks like the second FG of the game will quietly go to them. This would be a win for the Leviathans, though. Variety in an awkward spot does not have his ultimate. Fire Giant drops, stun from Zapman onto Variety, and the Camelot Kings immediately lose their first FG buff right after capturing it. What are you mad at Haddix for? Oh, did he ult?
He ulted, man. My man descended all the way into the depths of madness so that he could, I don't know, next time just press VET. That's the taunt, all right? You don't need to use your cooldowns for it. Yeah, I'm just not certain that was necessary, probably because he didn't even hit him with it. But regardless, a pick is a pick, and taking Fire Giant off of Roddy has certainly got some value.
Kill.
And Zapman's got a kill now. I think the fight back is
And
certainly
Griffin
there.
Wings.
And Griffin Wings are done. Did it change the lob? I can't tell.
How's he going to use the lob 2 feet away from where he's... I want to be able to see it launch out.
Twig, do you win these? No.
Apparently not. Zapman dashes forward. We're still
No,
not going to
no
get a
way!
good glimpse at it. But Zapman trades out a 1-for-1. Gets his second kill of the game. Right around the corner from 10 deaths.
Bro, Twig, you can't... That cannot happen. That simply cannot happen at the highest level of play if you want to break into the top 2. The Leviathans ADC just turns it all around. There's no way Zapman escapes, so the dash in just perfect. Fortunately for the Camelot Kings, Haddix, no ultimate here. Won't be able to create much space.
Camelot Kings with 4. Leviathans also with 4. And the left side, Phoenix going to take plenty of range damage. Nearly on its way to dropping down. Need some initiation here. Gotta see something from Haddix. Haven't seen much from the Cthulhu yet this game. Panatom has found good drop kicks. Hasn't found one yet in this team fight. Heart Bomb connects onto the back line. Panatom in and out. And down goes the Phoenix with relative ease from the Kings.
Haddix ultimate comes up just as the Phoenix falls, as does Captain Twig. So the Camelot Kings should be able to reset themselves, play around that trebuchet in mid, and start to work their way forward.
Surely.
What are you looking
I want
for?
to see.
The snipes look good.
Yeah, those are zooming. That's working, right? Am I blind?
I think that's right. I don't know how fast the snipe is normally faster already.
Normally it's pretty speedy.
Those are working for sure.
Yeah, those are good. That's just his auto attacks. I think it might, if they synergize perfectly, could potentially actually be really, really good. We'll see if the 2 and 9 Zapman.
Use the lob, coward.
Okay, no, he's getting stunned. He can't use anything right now. He is backpedaling away. Snipes needed, but watch out. Captain Twig could finish off the kill Onto the back line, but no, the Ratatosker going back
Good
to help
lord.
out the rest of his team, where Panatom and Shinto have ripped through the Kings. There is still some dive on the back line where Zapman has had to avoid big man Tings. But Panatom wants to keep the onslaught going. Shinto hits a killing spree, and the Leviathans get a clean 2.
The Leviathans have been capable of that exact team fight for the last 10 minutes. They just grouped up as 5 and had Haddix create some space for Shinto or Rongyu lock someone in. The Kronos is always capable of that amount of damage. Finally, we get to see what a 5-on-5 engagement starts to look like, and the Camelot Kings struggle up against it. I think you have to figure out an answer. I would say generally in this position, maybe like a Heavenly Sprint or an Entangling Wing, so you could just like disengage once the Descent of Madness happens.
Oh my god!
Good lord!
Oh my god!
That was 1,600 damage from an auto and his first ability.
I physically recoiled.
That's like he just Earthshakered him on a 5-second cooldown.
Oh my god. Well, think about it. What is it? 37 minutes when the passive fully tops
Do you think they're
out?
aiming for that?
37.5 says Billy back in production when his passive fully caps out. Honestly, when these two teams play, that's such a safe bet that you're getting somewhere.
We're going
in the,
40 at
we're
least.
getting somewhere in the 35, so you're getting max value. That was gross. Captain Twig he shot up like 3,000 damage in the last like 2 minutes.
Before the team fight, I'm pretty sure he was sitting at 13K.
Yeah.
So that's a
He ended it
7K jump.
Yeah, he ended it at like 17 or 18K.
Puts another 2,000 on Twig.
That is nuts. Well, and to your point that we talked about earlier, when the Kronos is like hitting.
And he's undying so far. Nobody
working.
has been able to shut him down.
Well, think about it. Aegis buys you a little bit of time. If you can get that rewind off, you get a second life. I wish we got an alternate timeline. Just give him like
that would be gross.
Just give him like 5 lives and all
Get a
of these
Capri
fights.
in there too.
That's right. Why not? Just protect the Kronos comp. Now, in all likelihood, it's going to come down to this last FG fight. Haddix has teleport. Remember, there's a couple more waves of fire minions, probably a few more actually. The Phoenix a minute or so away from respawning. This being an enhanced fire giant, gotta think the Leviathans feeling okay about their chances around this FG.
So long as Haddix is standing in front and has access to his ultimate, the Leviathans have to be confident in their team fight. Relic Roundup, just about all of them available, are about 10 seconds away from Shinto's Aegis. 10 seconds on beads from Panatom as well. Otherwise, full strength and ultimates and relics. Same can't be said of the Camelot Kings, whose bracer has already been expended.
Zoom, zoom, zoom.
Regardless, Fire Giant pulled. It's burning slowly.
It is. Down to half, though. The Camelot Kings have gotten half the job done. Haddix now back to base to deal with the fire minions, but it's a backpedaling from the Kings, but no, now it's Big Man Tings dashing forward. Early rewind out of Shinto, and Rongyu trying to save his mid laner has made a fatal mistake. A double dunk hit from Twig, and it's a perfect initiation from the Camelot Kings. Zapman now with all to do in the remainder of this team fight, using the space created by Haddix. Should be able to get out okay. Variety still in around the corner, and Genetics is being run down
One
by
more
Haddix
shot.
and Panatom. Left side Phoenix gonna get finished off by the fire minions, and we still got a 3 versus 3.
Panatom still full strength. We get the Gilgamesh buffs. They'll come in. Drop kicks on a shorter cooldown now. He's allowed to miss the 1. Yarkor still very threatening though. A dash heart bomb
Genetics is
could
so
really just
low.
find a kill.
There
Oh,
are
it's
lobs.
working.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
working.
Oh my goodness, it's like an insta AoE detonate from Zapman. It feels so good, but they gotta hit onto the priority targets here. Yark is able to dash away. And on a knife's edge is this team fight. Unfortunately for the Leviathans, fortunately for the Kings, left side Phoenix respawned and did end up dying again.
Zap.
Those fire minions, my
Oh
goodness!
my God.
He's chunking! He nearly gets a 2 versus 1 and he wants to keep going. They simply can't trade from over the wall. Maybe old man Zap has got some new tricks. And he is chunking out some damage late on in this game. At 4-9, he was 1-9, 0-9 at one point.
He's owing a lot.
He was 0 something, and he's now really come back into this game. This is electric. Some fun builds and interesting character picks from the Leviathans and the Kings have made game 1 of this set a whole lot of fun.
Fortunately, game 1 continues as the Dance of the Fire Giant will have to resume. Enhanced Fire Giant this time around. Levi's have not been able to push up that left side wave very well,
No
so they
teleport
will
this time.
be able to move in towards that base. Camelot Kings have got defensive positioning, ward advantage, cooldowns still looking pretty decent as well. It's just about whether or not they can get onto Shinto again. Keep your eyes on Twig. It's his job.
Twig had a fantastic dunk onto both Shinto and Zapman in the last team fight. Look at the Aegis from Shinto and Zapman, perfectly in sync with one another. And so much of that pressure was dropped down by Captain Twig. Now, Haddix has been able to buy time for his teleport to come back up, so should be able to get back, deal with some of these fire minions just fine. This would be great from Panatom.
Uh-oh.
Forces the ult.
So valuable
from Twig.
for Panny.
Blink for the Through the Cosmos. Now, Shinto and Zapman feeling a bit more safe as the Fire Giant has been pulled by the Kings.
Haddix teleporting in, allows the minion wave forward. The Camelot Kings, they can't know he's here.
Watch out for Zapman. He's been sent back by Variety, and Haddix continuing to buy space. The back line of the Leviathans can now step forward as the first kill for the Levi's drops. But big man Tings maybe takes one with him as Panatom has also fallen. The back pedal from this Ishtar is strong, but not strong enough. Twig simply walks forward and deletes Zapman. But Twig will live. Shinto on the rewind, right on the other side. Hoping to get it done all on his own. He'll get rooted in place. We'll have to use the Aegis, but Genetics
Good juke.
will get his stun, dodged out.
Book
of
of
the
the
Dead procced from Shinto. Extra shielding helping, wrong you. Close range as well. It's gotta connect onto Yarkor. And it looks like just the presence of the Kabrakan's been enough.
Peel's been good, but can Wrong Yu make his way out as well? Heart Bomb off the mark. So Wrong Yu survives again. Shinto putting out a whole lot of damage. Does at least lose the Book of the Dead passive. So next dive from the Camelot Kings might be able to just find it.
And Aegis again.
Aegis too. Fire Giant pulled. No way the Leviathans step up to this one. And I think rightfully so. Your base defense was so strong last time around. Play around that once more. The Camelot Kings, they've got to team fight you still. Your Titan's still healthy enough that they can't just walk in and deal with it on its own. Levi's lose the fire. Camelot Kings put it on 5. But that left side Phoenix is pretty close to respawning.
Feels like Panatom's found some good jumps in, like found the necessary targets, but had a hard time setting up for the team without Haddix in there at the same time. Immediately died at the beginning of that last fight. This is such a Zapman type game to win, isn't it? He's going to end the game at like 4-12, but still somehow win. Just makes too much sense. Though the Camelot Kings, they're the ones with all the wind at their sails right now. They put so much pressure onto the backlines in these fights. It's that perfect SMITE team fight dance between can Haddix buy enough space, but Captain Twig so easy to go up and over and find the back.
Yeah, and it seems like Shinto's been a little bit off the mark with a few too many of his stuns.
Yeah.
Damage output from Kronos very good, but still difficult to land some of those abilities and haven't been too consistent with it just yet.
Yark's
some
been
time
going
to
nuts.
spool up. Yeah, Yarkor 7-1-7, 40,000 damage and an elixir of power in pocket as well. The Camelot King's new ADC, kind of proving why he got picked up here.
I wonder if that's like really the crux of the problem here, where Haddix is buying space, but it's more of a like separating the initiation from the Kings, whereas the Ark hasn't necessarily been under as much pressure. He's been able to just sit back and wail away on Haddix.
This could be big.
And wail away on the rest of the Leviathans. This is a 1v1. Remember, we got the Through the Cosmos out of Twig last time.
Twig does not want it.
I was going to say, most of everything missed from Panatom, and Twig used his ultimate anyway, and now Panatom could chase this down, hits the drop kick anyway, in a 1v1 for game 1. Captain Twig wins it. Now the Leviathans without their jungler for the next minute.
Captain Twig has done a lot for his team, could continue the split push. Not exactly healthy just yet, so just presence on map, I think, more valuable, and he's done plenty of work in taking Panatom off the map. Camelot Kings now with a 2-2-1 split, and only 4 members of the Leviathans to deal with this.
Zap.
I don't think Zap can do it on his own.
Oh, Zap, at risk of his 11th death of the game, wants to dash in and at least trade out. Minions dealing so much damage to Zapman now, but Haddix is here to help. Double stun from Zap! Gets the Aegis off of Tings, and Haddix finishes the kill. But now Zapman has been dealt with as well. Shinto's got to carry the damage throughout the rest of this team fight, and he's chasing Twig all the way around to the back of this fight. Shinto is going to be able to close this gap, but is he going to be the last one on the map for the Leviathans? No, he'll have the help of Haddix, and unable to get the kill. Roundabout fight from the Kings, but the result all the same.
2 birds taken,
Oh, no.
right side
Oh, no.
losing out on space. Shinto dying quickly.
Uses his ult, gets back to it. Is that going to deliver him? Right into the backline. Twig!
Got him.
Unable to get up to the branch, and now Shinto needs to hit it all. Helps out Panatom, getting damage onto Yarkor. And now the ADC of the Kings off the map. You can't kill the Titan, not just yet. The Leviathans live to fight another day.
Man, Shinto played conflicted verse on that base defense. There's a whole lot of time chasing Twig, but all that time spent alive means he was there for the final stretch of it. It was very difficult for the Camelot Kings to survive his onslaught. I think the answer for the Kings has become clear based off of that base defense. If you want to end the game, you're going to have to go through Shinto first. His damage output just way, way too high. The Kings have spotted this rotation from the Leviathans. Ward on Cold Fury reveals their positioning. But I'm not certain that the Kings will be expecting the Leviathans to play this far up still. It's a reset. We're just taking some buffs, headed back to base. It's all about getting those Phoenixes back and alive for the Levis. Kings, though, probably going to wait an entire minute on this Fire Giant to spawn. Those Phoenixes will come up pretty quick.
I mean, map state is the difference maker now. Everyone level 20, everyone full build. A couple power pots, things like that, of course. The Variety sold off his starter item, picked up the Ethereal Staff. That'll help out. It's not an easy task for Variety to match the pressure that the Cthulhu is on the other side. Done a decent job of it, though, so far. Feels like the Xing Chen is sprinkled just enough discourse. Discourse? I don't know. You know what I'm going for.
I'm with you.
Into the back line that's kept the Leviathans thinking.
I mean, Variety's done more damage and only has one less kill, so I'd argue doing a phenomenal job as of now. Leviathan showing presence around the Fire Giant. The Camelot Kings give up some space. I think the Kings can just slow play it with the base as exposed as it is for the Leviathans.
Right.
I mean, just wait for those minions to do the work. Left side already starting to approach the base as well. Someone's going to have to back soon. Haddox has access to the teleport, but Cthulhu not exactly the best at dealing with these enhanced waves.
Might need to be a prayer now from the Leviathans on some type of steal, but this late in the game, this Fire Giant is going to be gone really before you know it. Haddox is using his teleport now. The Leviathan's feeling like now is the time to fight. And into the back line goes to Cthulhu. Captain Twig on the runaway. Panatom on the run in. Big man Tings has been able to escape. Where does the Ratatosker land? On top of Zap and Shinto. But he hasn't had the damage. The Leviathans have found the opening thread, but the Fire Minion's back on the base of the Levi's.
Zapman's got the base dealt with. The rest of the Leviathans can maintain pressure here. The Camelot Kings can't go back to base. They have to be concerned about the Fire Giant. Yarkor gets eyes, connects Heart Bomb, and Variety makes the same play Haddox did. He's TP'd in behind.
Pyro should help here. Get the rest of the Leviathans back in this fight. Shinto doesn't have ult,
He
doesn't
turned it.
stun. It gets the fade away onto Yarkor. It's Panatom now in and alone. Variety has caught him out, and Variety nabs the kill. It's Wrong You and Haddox, the front line, waiting for Zapman to get back into the fray as well. Can Zapman be the difference maker from 5-11 to turning this game around? But no, it looks like both teams will take a deep breath yet again. Yeah, we thought we were going 37.5 minutes. No, we're well over 40. And still some room to go here as the teams wait on their respawns. The Phoenixes are going to come, I don't know how long that little chunk is, Smith, but you're talking about another 30, 40 seconds.
No, they got it.
Might be equal map state.
I think the Leviathans just win out on that exchange.
Yeah.
Fire Giant stays up. Phoenixes respawn. Only one more enhanced wave to deal with in both mid and left. Unless the Camelot Kings can make something happen in the time that Panatom and Shinto are both dead, that is just a clean win for the Levi's. Fire Giant's been pulled, but it'll go slow. You haven't got Yarkor for this one. And Wrong You spots it out. He's moving in. Variety, can you play goaltender to another Guardian?
Is there more drama to have in this game? Game one, no attempt from the Atlantis Leviathans. It'll go down to Phoenix Siege, Phoenix defense one more time. Now that was a brilliant flank from Haddox. And I think a big difference here, Miff, is when you kind of rewind to that last fight. Twig again found a fantastic ult in, but just immediately got deleted upon landing, whereas other times has forced the backpedal, forced the beads and Aegis, and been able to either get a kill and get out. The lopsided trades worked out there for the Leviathans. I wonder if they feel, the Leviathans feel, Miff, that they got to take their fight out of their base. They want to keep these Phoenixes up as long as possible.
Just get the Phoenixes to regen a little bit, I think, should be the strategy from the Leviathans. Instead, Oni Fury pulled out this late?
Yeah,
it's
you
a
need
heavy
it.
risk.
You need it. You got to have the Oni Fury. You need it to win the game, say the Leviathans.
Panatom
has found Tings. Oh, my lord, the Leviathans again with the opening pick. now. The ripcord's been pulled by the Kings. They are retreating for their dear lives. Genetics in the wall with 5 members of the Leviathans. Maybe a split push now from the Kings, but no, it's one member back. It's Yarkor in the mid lane Phoenix, and it's Twig and Variety considering a bird.
And they lock eyes with Shinto and say, that guy hit me for 1,000 with an auto attack earlier. And Captain Twig just leaves. Maybe a split push attempt. It starts over the Oni, and it will end at the Oni. Atlantis Leviathans take it for themselves.
What do you want the Levi's to do here?
2 dead for 40?
Yeah.
Get to pushing, and you've got multiple ways to push. Don't let Yarkor backdoor your Phoenix. That's one way to lose a game. But Shinto on his own has got so much threat, he can just move in towards this right side tier 2.
Do you think the Leviathans can end?
I don't know that they can end. Yarkor's got pretty decent damage output.
Think about what Shinto
It's not
can
impossible.
do to these Phoenixes.
It's not. It is certainly not impossible, but it is not
going to
easy.
be up soon. You're looking for the bird. Give yourself a map state advantage for once, say the Leviathans.
Ting's up at 5.
Can you stagger out these deaths? So that's now the big question. The mid lane Phoenix is an afterthought, and it looks like that's the only thought. Oh no, Variety with his ult will walk towards the Leviathans, but for the first time in 45 minutes, the Leviathans have a map state advantage and fire minions in mid with Oni minions in a few of the lanes.
Man, the Leviathans, they really do make you earn every single bit of map play. Every single game win is absolutely earned when you play against the Leviathans, and the Camelot Kings appear to be coming up a bit short here. Mid Phoenix taken, 3 towers still standing. Fire Giant for another minute on the 3-man core of the Camelot Kings. Variety, Captain Twig, and Yarkor. Finally 5 stacked once more. Just thanks to Yarkor holding it, I think you can at least try and attempt this siege. Got the dash.
Yeah, can you get the kill now onto Variety? Or onto Haddix, rather. Variety, maybe. That's what Panatom's looking for. But this is a big win for the Camelot Kings. They simply walk away from the Descent into Madness. That has been so much of the space creation, if not all of it. Now Variety forward, Whirlwind of Rage
got a
and
great
Steel.
wall!
Oh, but the wall from Wrongyou keeps Haddix right where he is, and maybe keeps the game alive.
That is the perfect response from your Bracken. It costs you both your Guardian's ultimates, but you at least maintain your lives.
Uh-oh, Twig is up. Twig is up. Shinto, Zapman, they've got both relics and their ults. They're ready to go. They're ready to defend the dive in. But what does Twig want to do? Leave is the answer. No big siege from the Kings. This will give a bit of time for Haddix to get that ult back.
That feels so awful, I'm sure, for Variety, who's thinking to himself the second he goes in that ultimate, checkmate. I finally got you, Haddix. He had tried it, what, 3-4 times up until this point? Just catch him on the exit of Descent into Madness, and he finally connects. And Wrongyou says, psych, do it better next time. Better pray I'm not around. And the Leviathans once more extend this game, because that was perfect odds for the Camelot Kings. They had done everything. Yep. They survived the Descent into Madness. They don't take any damage. They re-engage in mid. Captain Twig goes up in the air, and it just fizzles. That was one of the best opportunities the Camelot Kings could have asked for. Now the Leviathans just need to play around Haddix. He's already halfway, make that 3/4. Back to his ultimate. Levi's back at full strength.
Fire Giant gonna respawn in just a few seconds. Leviathans fans will breathe a sigh of relief that for the first time we're going to go into a Fire Giant buff with a Phoenix down in the Camelot Kings side of the map. The Kings fans will feel okay because they're mid lane Phoenix. Yeah, you could send Twig over there to deal with those, ult into the team fight a bit quicker if you need. Remember, the last big fight the Leviathans found success in around the FG, the one where they really broke the base of the Kings, was a nice flank from Haddix. Really pushed back big man Tings and Yark. Yark closing in on 60,000 damage. Ward not deep on the King side of the jungle, so Haddix is just going to have to walk around the backside or find a way to blink there. Won't be catching the Kings by surprise this time.
You know, the ultimate approach from Captain Twig has not been great in the last couple of team fights. We haven't seen Twig just blink stun onto Shinto or blink stun onto Zapman. If he's quick enough with this Heartseeker build, might be able to just 100-0 Shinto. Maybe not through Book of the Dead as well, but certainly Zapman. Just seems like there are ways for Captain Twig to get involved without initiating with ultimate, because the last couple of times it just has not worked out. Instead, use it as a defensive tool or maybe a re-engage or chase down a little bit later on. Otherwise, the Leviathans, they're ride or die on the Shinto train now. It is hey man, did you hit your whole kit? If yes, we won the team fight. If no, well, maybe the team fight will just keep going.
Imagine if Kronos' passive just kept going.
Forever, indefinitely.
Just never stopped stacking. I mean, he would swing even harder than he currently is, which is near one-shot territory on any of the carries. A 1v1 we've kept our eyes on often this game. Panatom and Twig running into one another. And also, this is now an area. Obviously, Tings has the ultimate poke advantage. Remember with Zap, and now he's held on to the Griffin Wings. We've seen him poke out some really good damage. This is big. Panatom not only gets the ult out of Captain Twig again, but drops him down to half HP. Is this now an immediate FG call from the Leviathans? No, Twig will sustain back up, and actually maybe it's Haddix who's a bit caught out. Fire Giant pulled by Zapman. Haddix creating space, but the Leviathans don't have one continuous thread in this team fight.
Wall.
It's back onto the Fire Giant, and it's confirmed by the Levi's, but what is the price you have paid? It is an opening for the Camelot Kings, and it's your duo lane. Their lives have been paid for the EFG. Now Panatom and Shinto again, the last two on the map, with some low health bars, need to find a kill. They're unable to do so. The Kings get 4. They lose FG, but they win the game.
Shinto's still alive, Dave.
No
I'm
shot.
not so certain.
No shot.
Is he going for a base race? He's got minion wave and he's got Polly. No way he kills the
He's
Titan
so
fast
slow.
enough.
Speed yourself. Run, Shinto.
Variety's back. This is no longer an avenue of success. He needs to get back to base and defend.
Yep. Look, the Camelot. If Shinto somehow repels this attack,
just needs to land his abilities.
He is my GOAT forever and always.
First whiff.
Nothing on the first. Gets stunned on the second. Aegis off on the third. And at 50 minutes, the Camelot Kings will win game number 1.
The Camelot Kings have absolutely earned it in game 1. And it was tough odds they played into. Harken back to 20 minutes into the game, and it's the objective steals and trades that just don't go their way. Shinto allowed the free farm for the first 40 minutes of this game, it almost felt like. But the Camelot Kings keep their heads on straight and play well around their composition and crush the Leviathans.
What a crazy game. 45 minutes ago, we were talking about Zapman's 4th death in a row, and he ends this
Life was
game
good
like
back
6-11.
then. Simpler times.
It was a lot simpler back then. We were in the laning phase.
That's right.
We were talking about what can this Ratatosker do to really get things
Land some
going.
dunks, we thought.
We thought.
No.
What a fun dynamic between Panatom and Twig this game as well. I kept thinking that the 1v1 where Twig kept having to use through the Cosmos to get away was just gonna be it. Like, who's gonna find that back line? But Yark, the carries of the Kings, they get it done on the front. This is nuts. This is a fun game number 1, hoping for some more excitement in game number 2. We'll see what happens at the Kings and the Leviathans, game 2, coming up next.
Oh, and one of the most entertaining games we've had, I'll say this season. The Kings are able to find game number 1. And man, there's a lot to try and break down in that one. But before we get into that, I'll give Charlie a moment to prep, and I can inform all of the let's say, the creatives out there. There's a good chance for you to earn some money if you so please, because we have the 9th annual cosplay contest going on. Now, it is a total prize pool of $9,000. Of course, if you go to smitegame.com/SWC, you can find out a lot more details. But for those of you who are curious, first off, I've hosted it for the last few times. Even before that, Katie participated in a couple of these. I always love the cosplay contest. I think it's just fun. First off, it's a great community event, but also some of you out there are absolutely insane at craftsmanship, and it is wild to me things that the community has made. It's going to be split, in person. There's a master level with a $3,000 first prize, as well as a journeyman level. So for those of you who are like worried that maybe, you're like, man, I've never really cosplayed before, it is separated. So those that have been doing it for years and those that are fresh at it won't be competing up against each other. There's also Gold Star Awards for creativity, craftsmanship, likeness, thriftiness, as well as originality, things like that. And if you can't make that, then there is an online version of the cosplay contest. Obviously, the in-person one's the big one, but if you wanted to participate from home, I believe there's more information, not only at that link, but just in general. I think 19th of December is the last way to sign up for that, so you want to make sure that you get in on that while you can. Charlie, hopefully that bought you the time necessary to figure out where you're going with this, because that was a hell of a game, man. I mean,
yeah.
It was all over the place.
It certainly was. It was one of those situations where it just looked like for a while the Camelot Kings were in control, and I think, they were in control for a while, of course, but the Leviathans had some answers back. And it all starts with Zap tweeting, new build coming to the SBL. He starts the tier 2 Griffin wings. And then he's got 11 deaths at one point. It was just, they were going crazy. They wanted to put pressure onto this duo lane, and the Camelot Kings wanted to play through Yarkor, and Yark was popping off. I mean, this Cupid was doing tons of damage, but you don't make it to almost 50 plus minutes into a game without both teams popping up. And I think Shinto was doing so much damage. The 1v1s between Pantom and Captain Twig, so fun to watch, consistently finding each other before the fights even started, forcing out those ultimates. I mean, it was just, as you said, a hell of a game. It was back and forth, so much damage being sent out. And when you're looking at, the picks and bans for a game number 2, I could think of almost 9 different picks that both of these teams could look at and think of, well, maybe if this didn't happen, this would have been better. If we had a little bit more safety here, that sort of thing. If there wasn't so much damage coming from Shinto or Big Man Tings, that sort of thing. So I don't envy the situation either of them are in, but man, what a game that was.
I think it's funny. I wanted to ask you this, because of all the things to maybe pick on, first off, 11-3-9 for hardcore. Wow.
Zap did bounce back.
I did, yeah. I actually thought if this game goes on a little longer, I was almost certain we were about to see another triple-double. We got one from Scream, a couple weeks ago, after 2 years, and then all of a sudden shows up and is able to potentially find another one. Could have been really fun for them. Unfortunately, did not go long enough for that to happen.
Yeah.
That one's just for me. A lot of damage, though, coming out of hardcore. I know he was approaching the 60,000 mark. I wanted to ask you a very important and crucial question.
Please do.
Is literally only buying one different item a new build? Or
and that's the thing.
It's new build incoming. He starts it off interesting, and then it was the same things we've been seeing.
Let's be clear. Panda Cat has built that as well, but it's the starting of Tier 2, of the Tier 2 Griffin. That's what he's referring to.
Yeah.
He didn't go Death's Toll.
But is that a new build? It's like, hey, I got a new start.
Yeah, what he means is new start.
Yeah.
The build was the exact same. It was not a new build. It was a new start. And hey, it had some interesting interactions with each chart. I think that's the reason he even tweeted it out. But yeah, 12 deaths there. So.
And, 7 of them, if not 8, were unanswered before he got a kill back. Again, bounces back 6 and 12 towards the very end. Maybe, again, not glamorous by any means, but a lot. I had another one for you.
Please do.
And that's because if you look at the Kings, a lot of that, again, some of it feels very Kings-oriented. The Cupid, very important because he was massive early on, and you can answer this question as we get into picks and bans, because it's related to picks and bans here for game number 2. Do you think Kronos is going to suddenly show up more? Does he get banned? Are we going to start seeing him in other games? Because those buffs felt pretty big. And as we just saw, in the right hands. I mean, granted, it definitely still has its flaws. He did a lot in that game.
It certainly did. I don't think the Kronos... It's hard because it's Shinto, right? It's not like Kronos is that insane. It was that Shinto's that insane and it was hitting everything. If you're missing, you know, your Kronos abilities, he doesn't feel that great. But because Shinto's so good on him, I could see that being something they consider. Remember, the Leviathans did take away, you know, the Scylla last time from BMT, so that's something they have to consider in this slot. They wanted to go with that first pick, so I'm curious what they do decide to change up. I mean, their team fight was solid. I think hi-rez was still creating a ton of space, but that is certainly something I was expecting. The Cupid
yeah.
being taken away from Yarkor. I mean, he's able to do a ton of damage on a lot of different characters, but it seemed like this is a real thorn in their sides for the team fight.
Well, Yamoja, Daji. If the Kings go for Ymir again, then we're in the same scenario as before. The Vulcan, as you had mentioned, the Cupid. Normally, Naja's been high up on that list. We've seen the Ymir actually come from the Leviathans in the past before, although not in game number 1. It was a lot more carry-oriented over there. But they're going instead to opt for the Xing Chen.
I don't hate that.
And actually, I almost maybe love that, right?
Yep.
I mean, you went 2 auto attackers. Granted, Kronos has a lot of buffs to his abilities in general, but you had 2 auto attackers. Xing Chen always feels good against them.
Yeah, I think if hi-rez wants to go to the Cthulhu, I guess doesn't even have the option anymore. Maybe, you know what, that might be the call there. I think the Kings were waiting to see what the Leviathans would ban in that last slot. With the Xing Chen ban, that tells me hi-rez was tired of getting Whirlwind of Rage and Steel the second Descend to Madness ran out. I mean, there was that one time where Wrong Yu caught him with the walls, but besides that, was consistently waiting for it. And then, as you said, the Furious Roar for those double auto attackers can also be super annoying. So the Kings realized, okay, they still want to go back to that Cthulhu, then we'll take that one away as well. So now the Leviathans have their choice. Notably, the Kings still do have that Scylla open if that's something they want to look to. They haven't shown that they want to first pick it ever, so maybe that's just something the Leviathans could have been worried about. But I'm curious to see what they'll prioritize here in this first pick spot. Will it be the Ishtar that they've been going back to? Looks like no. Zap said we're done with that one. Give us the CERN.
Well, and they had banned it last game, right? It had come through, and it's been contentious over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Last week, won 8 of its 11 games, and has been treated very, very well, I think, for everybody who's picked him up for the last, like, 3-4 weeks. I mean, he's been hanging around for a little while. That was one small buff to his Brambles, and suddenly he's heavily in the conversation. The Kings get the other 2.
Yeah.
I think that we're very high up, and actually looking at last week, the top 2 picks were Ishtar and Ymir. Something that feels pretty powerful to start things off, although we've been seeing a lot of Ymirs slipping up lately. Like, global warming's really getting to them.
The Ymirs are getting melted for
Yeah,
sure.
like, it's not as, like, solidified as it used to be.
Yeah, I would say so. I think the positioning of a Ymir always needs to be brought into consideration, but I think both of these supports, this case genetics, should be just fine in being able to, you know, position on that pick. It's going to be a very early Horus here for the Leviathan, something that maybe the Kings would have taken away, but it looks like they do want to grab that Kronos before the second wave of bans. I mean, these 2 picks I was very curious about. It looks like they want to make sure they're locking in that Kronos and the Horus, not giving the Kings a chance to take that one away. Probably a decent call. So if they want to get the BMT Scylla, now would be the time. If not, it's certainly getting banned away. He had a good performance on the Agni as well.
Yeah.
But one-shotting Kronos before Rewind gets off seems pretty cool.
That does seem pretty cool. We were talking about it as well. Actually, I can level you with this question again. Obviously, it worked out pretty decently in mid. Lancelot is the option for the Kings. The question I was going to bring to you is the same one I brought last time. Kronos versus Kernanos in mid. Shinto looked really, really good on this pick. Zap, I don't know if it was the pick, if it was the build. I don't know what was going on. It started out not so great. It still ended not so great.
Bro, if Zap starts tier 2 Griffin Wing on Kronos ADC, I don't know what to say. I think probably still taking that CERN over to duo. And Shinto, and this is what I was talking about. If you're hitting every single poly shot, every single time Rift with this Kronos, yeah, he's great. But Shinto just played, and he looked great on it. I'm not to say that Zap wouldn't hit those things, but
Yeah,
Shinto's
that's what I heard.
Yeah,
was-
Shinto's
you
warmed
said
up.
Zapman is not good enough to play the Chronos. I think that's exactly what you said.
I doubt he would even disagree with me, and that's not what I said. I bet you Zap would agree, and it's not what I said. But
Yeah.
Shinto looked good on it. So throwing it back to the hot hand, probably the call here for the Leviathans. And now we got to worry about getting your supports banned away. So that's what the Camelot
Yeah.
Kings went to. Fafnir, Athena, going to be gone because that Horus probably going over to Haddix in the solo lane.
Yeah, that's the glory of having it, because Wrong You can play it if you really wanted to, but we've seen Haddix play it more often than not of the two of them. So having that as a solo lane matchup and potential flex for them is really interesting. They banned the tier, which makes me think Horus, well, first off, tier has just been a monster.
Yeah.
Mainly this week, but also last week. We started to see it on the rise. And the Agni, which you had mentioned, but the Scylla's still available. BMT made that look incredible yesterday. Unless they're going for something really wild, I have to imagine neither of those picks, or specifically the Scylla, is not something the Leviathans are going to take away in their bottom two. So I can ask about, Lancelot matchups, like the jungle matchups at this. Panatom looked really good on the Gilg, but does Gilgamesh have as much of a fun matchup as Panatom had last time into the Ratatoskr, into a Lancelot, or do you think he needs to shift away?
I think that it depends on what Panatom wants to do here. The Susano is available, but into a matchup like this can be a bit scary. They're going to go with the Discordia. And this is what I was curious about. I didn't think the Camelot Kings actually valued the Scylla pick that highly. I didn't think it deserved a first ban. It just seemed like the Leviathans watched their game yesterday and like, that could be scary, let's ban it. And turns out the Kings, they didn't even prioritize Scylla that highly anyways, right? They're even this late in the draft, they're not going to pick it up. They're going to grab the Disco and hopefully let, Captain Twig or whatever variety decides to pick play through that Discordia passive. But the question is, what is Panatom going to go to? I don't think he enjoyed the Gilgamesh too much. I think this is the style of play that I expected from him. That Wheelix Hover is questioning me. I'm more concerned about the Susano. This was banned away from him last time. He loves to get to the backline and go for those Hunter Zio style plays. So this is more so in tune what I expect from Panatom, and it looks like they are going to lock that one in.
You get the Khepri as well, right? The Res. You think about it, Kronos has
Kronos
three
got 3
lives.
lives now.
He's going to feel really solid there. Plus, you've got Horus for movement, things like that. A lot of Prot Shred as well for the Leviathans to help deal with the front lines a little bit. But the Susano Burst, we saw him on the rise because of the lack of Aegis over the last couple of weeks. Does he still have that staying power that you would maybe want from your jungler?
I do think he still definitely has that kill potential in the backline, but this is a draft that deals with Susano extremely well. If that RDO gets locked in, the Ymir and the Ishtar and the Lancelot, just the cripple fields, as well as the Golden Apple. There's a lot that makes sure that Susano does not get to use his movement abilities for free in the backline. And because Leviathans have also went in for that Khepri, you got to think, they don't have that Cabrakan anymore. They don't have that Diving Force. They don't have the Cthulhu anymore. They have the Horus. So their team fight presence has certainly got a lot scarier. And I think the Camelot Kings have spread out their damage quite well. Playing through the RDO and the Lancelot with the Discordia passive, I expect to see a lot of pressure towards that solo lane side of the map.
I think we have two very important questions we have to tackle before we get into game number 2.
Right.
One is, do you think Zap's going to get absolutely slaughtered in the first, 15 minutes again, or does the Kerninos survive a little more?
I think that Zap has to watch his positioning. I don't think there's any way he goes the Griffin Wing start on CERN. Again, I think it just has a good interaction with the AoE auto attacks from the Ishtar, so I'm expecting to see the normal Kerninos build. And if they put pressure over to dual lane, it could be trouble. They're going to need a Phantom Shell, and Wrong U's going to have to be camping that lane if they want Zap ahead. But let's be honest, it's the Leviathans. They very rarely, they let Zap on an island, man. They say, we'll see you at level 20. We don't need you now. If you die 11 times, we're still going to make it to 50 minutes in the game anyways. So we're going to play through the Chronos. I don't think they're going to try and save Zap too much.
That leads me to question number 2, which was, do the Kings have enough to stifle this Chronos? We mentioned Rewind, as much as it is fun to say, ooh, he gets a second life, it takes forever to finally cast. Then you get the Scarab's Blessing. Doesn't take forever to finally cast, but still kind of risky in the moment depending on whether you hit him, if it's even up, things like that, because it's another ult. is there enough to deal with this Chronos and the potential second and third coming of Chronos?
I'd say they have plenty of burst, and especially with the Khepri res, you can actually throw the apple onto Khepri and just wait for the res to pop and get a second iteration of that apple. So if that's the play, they definitely can deal with it. I'm just worried about how much damage the Leviathans have. It seems like they have a lot of CC. They're going to have to wait for late game to Shinto to actually get online like he did last time, but the dive of a Khepri and a Horus frontline doesn't look too clean. You're relying a lot on your carries being able to do all the damage for you. They've got plenty of safety, though.
Well, it was a very, I'm still going to just say interesting. I think it was exciting. It was a fun game one to watch. 50 minutes between these two teams.
Yep.
And even then, it didn't feel like it was going to end at 50. I thought we were going for another 10 for some reason. Unfortunately for me, but fortunately for the Kings, they win that. And they're one away from potentially pushing themselves one step closer to second seed. We'll see if they can find it here in game number 2 as we go back down to Dave and Mifflin.
Who are we kidding? It's Leviathans and Kings. We're going 45 plus again here in game 2. That's the Dave guarantee. We'll see. Camelot Kings would love to close this one out over the Leviathans. Keep some intrigue in the air as far as top 2. Remember, 1 win behind the Jade Dragons. Dragons will play later on today, our second set. A lot of standings, phase 3 playoffs implications on the line there as well. If we go back in, though, some similar picks, some different picks, and it is not a unique Ishtar build for Zapman. Sticking with the Griffin Wing start on the Cernanos this time.
Imagine being Trelly. He didn't say new Ishtar build coming into the SPL today. He said new Hunter build. Tap in.
That's right. And we're going to see it again. Now, I was enthralled by it on the Ishtar because of the 1 and just how it interacts with the different stances, or the different options on the 1. Starting a bit more straightforward. Right? Your auto attacks are just zooming a bit faster, but Zap got there. Right by the end of that game, he was
putting up some damage.
He was putting up some numbers. Just took a minute to get there. Now, the brawl that we constantly see at the beginning of these games, support 1v1 for the purple buff, but wrong you and Zap just fine. I'm wondering if a build will ever catch up to the point where you can easily punish for first blood one of these supports on their way into the purple buff. But no, Genetics just take some damage and be just fine in lane.
Yeah, had it been a horrific start for Wrong You, I think Genetics just dead to rights there, but instead, Sunder in first slot helped out with the poke a bit. Genetics should be able to resustain pretty easily between Benevolence, Meditation, and the multitude of HP pots that he had loaded in with. So maybe you sacrifice pressure on the first couple of waves. This Ymir really doesn't want to get abducted anytime soon, but he should be fine in about a minute.
It's a blink in from Panatom, and no first blood for the Leviathans, but a first blood attempt that is like 10 damage short. Variety will gallop away, sustain back in base, teleport back to lane. No worse for wear. Love the pressure, though, from the Leviathans. You got a Horus. Let's get the Susano spun up early and keep Variety thinking.
Yeah, Panatom back on his comfort pick. I'm interested to see how it starts to perform compared to how it did in previous weeks with the Beads Aegis interaction. Susano was one of the gods that had majorly been buffed just because of the nature of Typhoon. Now that Aegis is back, he'll still be really good at burning those relics, but maybe a little bit less effective in the fight itself.
1 level lead for Yark. I mean, should be able to effectively trade against Zapman. Now, one thing we talked about a bit in game 1, Myth, that we're going to get to see later on, is the Chronos with also a Khepri on the team. I don't think he's going to do it. I'm also sneaky hoping for an alternate timeline
He won't.
upgrade. He won't, but like another iteration of a Chronos would be hilarious. For the Leviathans, probably not so much for the Kings. It's a return gank on a Variety. This time, it'll pay off. That's first blood to the Leviathans. Unfortunately, no teleport for Variety to get back to lane this time.
That's the Season 4 jungle special. Poke him out, wait for the TP in, go back in, and make sure that kill is confirmed. Timing on blue buff being as it is, Variety will just have to hope that Captain Twig can do it on his own.
Twig blinks forward and does drop the blue buff, but is he going to drop a kill in exchange? No, Panatom, not enough health or mana to stick around, you would think. And good early damage from Twig. Now, maybe wants to chase down the Atlantis Leviathans. Remember, there's a blue buff up on the other side of the lane. So potentially, if the early damage from the Kings was enough, yeah, looks like you might just be able to trade out blue buffs. Panatom will have to head back. Haddock's low. The Camelot Kings will go eye for eye.
Yeah, Panatom just not enough mana to stick around. Had he had enough for like even 2 abilities, it's pretty unlikely that the Camelot Kings go for the blue buff invade themselves, but a Susano that can't cast anything is not a threat, especially this early in the game. So great play from Captain Twig, not only to confirm his own, but to recognize the opportunity to step up to the Leviathans blue buff on the other side. But it still does go to Panatom, first blood that is. So that bounty should make up for the lack of experience and gold that you lose from the blue buff invade. I'm sure Panatom's feeling just all right.
I wonder how Twig adapts this game. So in the Ratatosker, yeah, you know, we did see a couple dunks in onto Zapman in game 1. A lot of pressure onto the Ishtar. Such a different look, though. I mean, the Lancelot, yeah, you can really dash in. You can use the ultimate to get into the back line. It's through a different avenue, though. Do you feel like Twig has to adapt to the play style from one pick or another? Is the goal still the same, just a slightly different way of getting there?
I mean, obviously it's a little bit different. Anytime you don't have global presence, your positioning is going to really change up. Ratatosker is just kind of allowed to stand in lane or on the edge of a team fight and know that he's capable of getting involved at all times. Twig in this one, I think, is going to be very reliant on the cripple field. Lancelot is very strong into just about every single one of the picks on the Leviathans that has got any form of mobility.
Double stun from Variety. No Typhoon from Panatom. But again, this Ardio's been under pressure. So it's been right side pressure from the Leviathans. This blue buff being looked at. Captain Twig is here this time. It looks like it'll end up getting dropped. The Leviathans won't go for the blue buff invade. So Myth, now it's Panatom showing us that the right side of the map is his goal. And maybe a kill onto Variety as well. Typhoon for the knockup. And an auto for the damage gives Panatom his second. Tings now out of mid lane, drops the apple onto Haddix. The Strife not enough. The last bit of mana from Haddix used to dash out. In early goings here, Panatom off to a 2-0 start.
Man, Variety just wanted to pick up his blue buff, and Panatom said, no, you're going to have to get through me. And not an easy task until he's got that breastplate finished up. So Variety lacking defense and lacking the ability to fight back in. Just going to be an easy second blood for the Leviathans. Surprised that Panatom has put this much emphasis on the right side of the map, though. I mean, shutting down an Ardio, very nice, just making it a little bit more difficult for the Camelot Kings to laner to frontline come team fight time, going to be valuable in of itself. But Ishtar up against Susano is not a perfect matchup. Just get in front of that dash, she's got a really hard time disengaging, the displacement very strong. And I think it'd be worth it to shut down Yarkor. That guy put up 73,000 damage in game 1. If I'm the Leviathans, I'm doing anything I can to prevent that from happening again.
Sure did. Here's a little damage, though, from Shinto and Rongyu onto Genetics, but with Thieves, going to take a lot. Everything so far connecting from Shinto. Med, worth its weight in gold, and Typhoon deals the killing blow. But now the Kings with a couple over in mid. Can they withstand Panatom?
Good God.
Yes, the tower will turn it around, but it was a double kill from Panatom. And it's Twig left alone. Shinto gets the stun, but Twig has a double of his own. It's a jungle battle early in game 2. Panatom with 4. Twig hoping for a triple kill, and his third. Gallops gets it. And a third and a triple for Captain Twig in mid.
Great rotation from Captain Twig. Good usage of the ultimate as well to immune the stun from Shinto. And just perfect counter engage. The Leviathans get a little bit over aggressive, diving into that tower. Shinto starts to channel the rewind, would have died had Rongyu not been there with Scarab's Blessing, but because Rongyu's forced to use it on his mid laner, Panatom has to trade his life to finish off his kills. Was 4-0 for a brief moment, now 4-1. That is a massive bounty over to the Camelot Kings. All 3 kills in the jungler, Captain Twig. And Lancelot is a god that can really start to run away with a game with a lead like this.
Yep, and Captain Twig likes this pick. Again, when we talk about the Kings, and yes, of course, you'd love to give yourself a shot at second seed, but confidence still there to make a run no matter what, no matter how you get there. Twig, hoping for a good performance, has started off well, but now is going to get chased down. The 5th of the game to Panatom. It's all junglers all day. Yes, assists from Rongyu, Shinto, and Haddix, 3 apiece. But all the kills landing on the Susano, and that's a real scary spot to be in, Miff. We know how well Susano can 1v1 and delete targets.
Yeah, it is a very similar conversation to a Lancelot with a lead, where if you're ahead on these picks, you can essentially just play as a solo agent. You're not really reliant on your laners to finish off your kills. Your ganks become lethal just on your own. You get massive 1v1 potential as well. which is why I'm surprised to see Captain Twig walk up so aggressively to that Greater Scorpion. We know the Camelot Kings love Scorpions, but making the solo play there, especially without your ultimate, just so easy for the Leviathans to chase him out. And that massive bounty that Panatom had just given up to Twig is now returned.
Uh-oh, Zapman in some trouble. Wild Hunt used on the fadeaway. Yark and Twig both use their ults as well. So a lot of the pressure onto Zapman in this fight. But Panatom, is he feeling comfortable enough to now go in? Look at the lockdown onto the Susano.
Good wall.
And the dash away. Genetics has kept this fight going. Captain Twig in. Typhoon! Oh, it's saved by the Scarab's Blessing. But York, does he have the detonate damage? No! Panatom will live. Twig will as well. And everyone on the left side of the map survives.
Man, Twig hops onto the horse just in time to get the HP shield. The first ability from Shinto would have finished him off if he were just about any other god. The Camelot Kings still playing with a good deal of confidence, despite a slight lead to the Leviathans. But the jungle battle is still in a state of parity just about. I mean, gold maybe a little bit more separated, but experience dead even. Power spikes have been hit though. Panatom finishing up that hi-rez means his burst is much higher now.
Zapman and Panatom closing in on their own purple buff. Another good wall from Genetics just forces Zapman around. Double freeze, but it beats from Zap. That tells you he believes there's a kill here. And he's right, there'll be another for Panatom. Doubling up Captain Twig on the other side now at 6 and 10. Jotuns and hi-rez going big at the 10-minute mark.
Yeah, maybe Panatom should probably just let Zapman get the kill there. It would have closed up a bit of that lead in the lane. It's a 0%er. The Genetics makes it out alive. And it controls the bounty. Having all your kills on one guy, I mean, sure, Panatom's your late game win condition, but now when he dies, your lead dies with him. Spreading the wealth, very valuable in situations like that. Regardless, a clean pickup and a nice rotation for Panatom does secure that kill for his team. But you got to think the Camelot Kings, with a composition that's already built very well to dealing with Susano, probably aren't overly concerned. You got cripples from Yarkor. Captain Twig's got a massive cripple field. Variety's got a mobile cripple field that follows him around. Big Man Tings with the golden apple. Susano might find himself, or Panatom rather, in a position where it's, okay, I'm super ahead and my build's massive, but I just can't cast my abilities.
Wow, and Variety has actually pulled a level ahead of Haddix, despite dying twice in lane and Haddix having 3 assists. Ardio has stabilized and felt just fine over the last few minutes of this game. There's a slight lead for Twig as well out of the jungle, despite Panatom having 6 of the kills. Twig in a really good spot to answer this gank, though, from Panatom. Typhoon ready. Typhoon hits Variety, but Panatom will never close the gap. Haddix attempting to do so. He'll be just shy as well. Double freeze from Genetics and an apple in from Big Man Tings on the left of the fight. But the Leviathans have come up empty-handed. In fact, it's going to get worse. Wrong, you will die with Scarab's Blessing. 2 of his teammates died, and then he died, and Scarab's Blessing still there. Probably wasn't in range for Panatom on the first, unable to use it on Haddix or himself. And now the Camelot Kings, they've come to fight. It's a different look at the Kings in the early goings of Game 2.
It's just the team fight, man. It's not exactly draft diff, but I would say it's like counter draft diff. I just love every single one of these individual picks into the power points of the Leviathans. Genetics is able to lock down just about everybody, barring Haddix, but including Haddix if a teammate isn't nearby. All the cripples we had talked about just earlier, the burst potential and chase potential that Captain Twig has got, and the ease of play in the mid lane, I think, is really starting to turn some heads. Big Man Tings just has a much easier to execute plan. Connect a Strife, Unruly Magic is a perfect combo afterward. Whereas Kronos is very, very execution dependent. It's not easy to always land that first ability, or very easy to always land the stun. And for the most part, it's going to be barrel stuffs for this Kronos, and playing into a deficit now, you don't exactly want to stand on top of the enemy.
Twig, Genetics, Yark. Out of the duo lane, a 3 versus 3, looking at the 3v3 of the Atlantis Leviathans. Big Man Ting's going to have a big role to play in this game as well. Discordia has been one of his storied picks. There's some good damage early in the game. And Genetics has started to feel himself a bit on these walls. It's a rewind from Shinto, but that's going to put him, I suppose, right back where he was. Thought he might have been further on the other side of the lane. Big ultimate down now. Less defensive utility from the Leviathans mid laner. If Captain Twig considering a dive here, but no, just jungle invade. Phantom's got to decide how heavily he wants to defend his side of the map.
Speed buff always, back camps probably not. That's the jungler's credo. So speed buff not under threat. Panatom okay with Captain Twig taking away those backs this time. The Camelot Kings keep up their pressure.
Wow, Variety's 2 levels ahead. How does that happen after the start that Variety had? I mean, I guess that little scrap, the 3 for none on right.
3 for none into a Pyromancer. Yeah. Spent a lot of time fighting in the jungle, whereas Variety was just kind of farming in lane. There are degrees to it. The lead's not out of control just yet. I think it looks a little bit worse than it is because the itemization from Haddix just doesn't have any magic defense. So every bit of poke from Variety getting a little bit more value, and Variety having all the healing in his kit as opposed to just the 1 from Horus means that Sustain's also going to favor him.
It's tough though, because that's where the Leviathans put their chips early in the game. Panatom and Haddix combined for a couple of kills, get the blue buff taken away, and now it's resulted in a 2-level lead at the 15-minute mark. That feels tough for the Levis. Still hoping that Panatom with 6 kills can find an insta-delete on a target, and that'll give you the advantage in one of these fights. It's right around the Gold Fury where you have to start to look, and the left side of the map, Myth, has been relatively even here. Zapman just with the assist, the support's the exact same KDAs. So the setup and the lockdown from Genetics, and then the revive from the Scarab's Blessing once we start grouping around the Fury Pit.
Yeah, and I think you're right to bring up Panatom, because when the entire lead is on you, when every kill on the map belongs to you, it's hard to say, well, it has to be you still. You have to continue to do more, but because the wealth has not been split whatsoever, it really is up to Panatom for the most part to start up these engagements. And as we get later and later into the game and those relics become available, ticking over to level 12 for just about everybody, Beads Aegis on Big Man Tings, Yarkor still waiting on that back. We'll see. Beads Aegis for him as well. Shell's already finished for Genetics. All the cripples we had talked about earlier. I think Panatom's going to have fewer and fewer opportunities to go as crazy as he did in weeks of past.
Yep.
Camelot Kings might be looking to force a fight around this Gold Fury, potentially a red buff invade. They've got ward on it, so they know the red is there, but have not made the decision to step up just yet.
Talked a lot about Panatom for good reason. Also talked about Twig a lot. Same amount of affected kills, but a couple extra assists. Twig also very, very strong with the 1-level lead over Panatom and a Heartseeker. Gold Fury melted, and Gold Fury confirmed by the Kings. There was a slight step forward by the Leviathans there, but uninterested in fully fighting over it. And look at how this game has shifted. Yeah, golden experience, Myth. Nearly 3,500, 4,000 for the Kings over the last couple of minutes. Really, and that's the game, kind of that big swoop down was 5 minutes ago. They've doubled their gold lead on neutral farm and neutral objectives since then.
And now with Pyromancer spawning up, the Camelot Kings don't need to worry about Gold Fury going to the Leviathans on the other side. Can just group up and play around their lead. Variety still nursing a 1 level. Captain Twig about a half level up as well. Play in your 2v2 around the solo, get a pick, that's a free pyro, or even just look for some TKOs, and it's the exact same outcome.
Could be some poke here. Is from Shinto, who will have to use the rewind. Oh,
yikes.
No! Oh, it's devastating for Shinto, but Scarab's Blessing now gets him out, and Captain Twig waiting on the other side. They've killed the Chronos twice, and finally, he'll stay dead. But Panatom with a massive 3-man knock-up into a root on the other end of it. Not bad from the Leviathans, but simply not good enough. While Twig breathes air, it's a triple kill for Captain Twig. You wanted a standout game. Twig's giving it to you. He's got 2 triples so far here in game 2.
7, 1, and 2. 9 out of 9 affected kills from the Camelot Kings jungler, and he is not going to stop. The Kings played perfectly around this multi-life Chronos style of composition. Rewind, stand exactly where he's going. Revive, Captain Twig's ready. And the Leviathans didn't get to play around their mid even once. Genetics playing with fire.
Can I
gets
kill
himself
you? Do you know?
I've never died for it, personally. I don't, maybe? I don't think so. I
have no
doubt
idea.
it.
I don't know if it'll let you stand there if you don't have enough health.
No, no.
You've never been, you know,
Go ahead.
crazy enough to try.
Sure.
I changed my words up there.
No, let's hear it. What did you want to say?
Nothing. I'm not allowed to say it.
You're
Myth.
not allowed.
I'm not allowed
Who's
to say
stopping
it.
you?
Me and my brain.
Okay, fair enough.
And my employment status.
That's crazy, coward.
Pyromancer. Oh, you call me a coward. That's unbelievable. That's worse than what I was going to say. Pyromancer confirmed by the Leviathans. So that's a small win in a sea of losses recently for the Levi's. Suppose that's... I was going to say that's where they're right at home talking about the oceans, but not the L's because they've been doing a whole lot of winning so far this phase. Still can't count this out. Shinto picks up Poly, scaling up nicely on this Chronos. It's going to have to find those openings and stay alive somewhere in these team fights because your point is correct, Myth. Been called out wonderfully by the Kings.
Yeah, so far the Leviathans have mitigated loss beautifully, taking another tower, just playing around Kronos' ability to just remove structures. Same build this time, Polynomicon third slot. Spirit Desolation and Book of Thoughts. We've got a little bit of penetration at that.
Alternate
Good amount of
timeline.
power. It's not going to be alternate timeline.
Why?
Man. It's not good.
Why are you crushing my dreams?
I don't mean to yuck your yum, but like you've already got
Rewind.
so many revives.
Rewind, alternate timeline, Scarab's Blessing.
I think legitimately the only value alternate timeline gets you as Kronos is like another shot for Wrong You to revive you, which is not
Yeah.
awful, but Pendulum of the Ages is just better stats.
I'm not saying alternate timeline is a better item.
You just want to see it.
I just want to see it
Understood.
because I think another revive, well, just more stats and damage, I guess, to the Kings with the way that this game has been going. But
Yeah, the Levi's, like, they don't want to play around the revives.
Right.
They want to be killing the enemy.
right, you don't have to revive a million times. That means the fight's not going your way. Phantom Shell off of Wrong You. Decent little win there for the Kings, getting that out for just standard wall from Genetics. Considering FG, but no commitment from the Camelot Kings.
I like this pickup from Wrong You. We saw it earlier, but I'll highlight it now considering how massive Captain Twig is for the Camelot Kings and their team fight. This Sunder is a hard counter to Lancelot. Just blast him off the horse. Anytime he's got a half HP shield because he's been walking around for a little while, Sunder will immediately remove him from it. He'll get the passive effects applied to him when you get knocked off horse. Won't have access to some of those abilities either. I think it is likely that we see Wrong You hold it until after the ultimate from Captain Twig when it instantly charges that HP shield. That's generally when Lancelot looks to re-engage. Catch a Sunder on the tail end, all of a sudden you're off balance. Could be a difference maker in some of these engagements.
The Kings now hoping to break the win streak of the Leviathans. Remember, Leviathans confirmed first seed for Phase 3 playoffs no matter what, have already broken the all-time win streak for SPL sets in a row. But would love to pad those stats just a little bit, make it harder to break that streak in the future. Kings, though, in a very, very good position here in Game 2. They'll extend that position with an Oni Fury. And why not? This is a Camelot Kings team, Myth. I mean, they're so consistent at playing from even a little bit behind, hoping to get back to some of that consistency. When they're this far ahead, it just enables their game plan so much better. Zapman being dove by Twig, who styled on him a bit. The beads avoid the stun from Yark, but Twig on a rampage. But Panatom has maybe gotten his job done. Solos out big man Tings. Yark, though, free casting in the back. And here comes the Lancelot, hoping to finish off the kill on a Wrong You. The wall from Genetics, fantastic. Another one from Captain Twig in this engagement. The stun from Variety is fantastic. Everyone from the Kings playing their part. And they've only lost Tings in the meantime.
Shinto still has access to the ultimate and has some turn potential, not against Twig with his HP shield. I'd like to see the captain, or the Camelot Kings rather, and the captain to just head over towards that fire giant. Could be an easy pickup considering how long 3 members of the Leviathans are dead. Keep Yarkor alive as well, and with this crit build, could make short work of some of these objectives. Shinto shows himself on left side. I'm thinking Fire Giant's on the menu.
That's right, Fire Giant for the Camelot Kings with an already hefty gold lead and still 4 towers to work down. Are we starting to approach, I mean, maybe we're already there, Myth. Wait for Shinto to get full build type territory. He's close, he's level 20, he's got Obsidian Shard. Hasn't upgraded the starter yet. Is Shinto still your win condition? Although Panatom has been it for most of this game. Is that the 1-2 punch you're hoping steps up?
I think so, man. Anytime the Chronos is allowed to 6 slot, that's what you built a composition for. That is going to be your heaviest hitter. consistent
Wow.
DPS in the attack stance as well.
We're gonna get this for free.
Where are the Levi's?
They're on purple. They're on the Fury
Why?
Pit. And the wall from Genetics makes this the easiest Phoenix Siege you've ever seen. A root onto Twig. That won't connect. A stun from Haddix, though. Leviathans want to trade back. They simply won't be able to do so.
Oh, it's
Strike!
spread.
Oh, that's beautiful from Big Man Tings. You can't write it up any better. And the Discordia has hit home right when they need it. The Camelot Kings knock down Phoenix and knock down Haddix.
And it wasn't a sneaky play from the Kings. They didn't path through the jungle and deal with vision and, you know, backdoor that Phoenix. They grab fire, and then they walk down the entirety of right lane, and the Levi's are just absent. Truant from the defense.
Oh my, that's a lot from Twig. That's a lot from Shinto, though.
These jukes.
Gotta be careful if you're Shinto. I mean, you're starting to get into territory of losing more Phoenixes if anyone on the Leviathans dies alone. It's an early call now from the Camelot Kings. Still have some gold to go back and spend up. I think the Leviathan's probably smart to not try to stop those backs. We saw what happened last time.
Yeah, the Levi's, I think, in a similar position as the previous match where we haven't seen their 5-on-5 just yet. They've still got the potential to fight back in, but that potential becomes more narrow. That win condition narrows as well as the Camelot Kings continue to extend their lead, rapidly approaching that 10,000 mark. Still plenty of towers to collect gold from as well. 2 minutes on the Fire Giant buff with all 5 members benefiting. Probably just going to see the Kings do this. Group up on left. Take out this Tier 1. No defense there. Tier 2, I'd like to see the Levi's group up a little bit. At least slow down the siege. Otherwise, the Camelot Kings will have just done literally everything on the map. Yep. So Tier 1 taken. What's the response from the Levi's? No rotation to the Tier 2 just yet. Red buff invade, I suppose. At least knock down the Tier 1 in mid. Not headed there either.
It was interesting on the Phoenix defense call. Leviathans were securing some buffs, just didn't make it back in time, and a similar thing is happening now, where the backs just now finishing getting channeled. The walls from Genetics have forced the hand of the Leviathans, and before the Leviathans show up, half the left side Phoenix health is gone. And the Kings in a commanding position. Big Man Ting's able to control some space. Captain Twig able to complete the dive on this Lancelot at 9-1-4. A standout game. Kings now knocking on the door. Looks like someone is home this time. Got about 50 seconds left on this buff. Maybe one big initiation chance from both teams.
Levi's playing well around space. It's on the Camelot Kings to force this engagement. A wall from Genetics could make it difficult for Shinto to get involved. Phoenix burning quick.
Well, it was a double stun from Yark, but the answer was just damage for the Phoenix. Apple out onto Haddix, left side Phoenix gone. And that is all the Camelot Kings wanted. Did not want the big fight, wanted the left side bird. And so right side fire minions, left side fire minions, this is getting back to kind of clinical territory for the Kings. As fun and chaotic as game 1 was in a lot of those team fights, this is the type of game that the Camelot Kings love to play.
Primal Fury knocked down, so next Fire Giant will be a little bit easier to take. Left side bird going down as late into the Fire Giant buff's lifespan as it was means that the Leviathans will be constantly contesting the PvE over there if they want to maintain base and presence around the Fire Giant. Panatom, I thought maybe in a little bit of trouble there. Variety had access to the blink, but it's actually Panatom going in.
Will blink forward.
Big fumble.
Yeah, not much, if anything at all, from Panatom there. Variety will be able to sustain up on the other end of it. Anti-heal prioritized by a few members of the Camelot Kings. Get Brawler's Beat Stick from Twig. A little anti-heal from Variety, a little anti-heal from Yarkor. Help out with some of what the Leviathans are going to be thrown out. But you're so far behind now if you're the Leviathans. A full 10K against a very, very rock-solid team-fighting team the Camelot Kings are. This call is probably correct. Let's deal with these fire minions as we can and hope that we got a good Titan defense.
Yeah, maybe you send one member of the Leviathans just to threaten a steal, a Typhoon from Panatom, or a stray first ability from Shinto. Might be able to do it. Whoever you do send, you're probably willing to lose in the fight. Panatom wishing he still had access to that blink. Probably could have caught out Captain Twig there. Kings pull a Fire Giant, Levi's. Roundup, nowhere to be seen. This one's free.
The Oracles, though, that'll go to the Atlantis Leviathans. Now, if you're the Leviathans, yes, you're hoping to avoid what happened last time. And they will immediately channel their backs and head on back home, and it looks like should be able to defend the right side Phoenix if that ends up being their choice. Still a tier 2 tower in mid. Does make your life a bit easier on the Titan Siege if you're the Kings to go ahead and knock that down, but they're so strong and so far ahead. You're going to take your chances on the crippled Phoenix on the right side of the map. Shinto is way behind the Camelot Kings here. Can the Chronos flank pay off?
Whoa.
He will blink in. He will nearly delete Big Man Tings, but the blink Chronos doesn't pay off this time for Shinto and is evaporated, unable to get off his ultimate. And now the Kings have a 5v4 for the set.
Shinto nearly one-shots Tings, and he's probably expecting a Scarab's Blessing. Doesn't get it instead. Wrong you, cast it on himself. Camelot Kings, 40 seconds to play with here. No mid laner for the Leviathans. No revive from the support. Knock down the tier 2. Start to approach the mid Phoenix as well. You have so much time.
I know.
I imagine, yeah, just group up and keep your siege up. Left side bird will spawn soon too.
No mid laner, no Scarab's Blessing. Massive pieces missing from the Leviathans base
They're going
defense. Game number 1 gave us all the drama. Game number 2, it's been a jungle battle that's now turned into a massive Camelot Kings lead, and the Camelot Kings, they will end the winning streak of the Atlantis Leviathans. They will keep their hopes alive for top 2, and they'll beat the Levi's 2-0.
Captain Twig puts one more on the board, rounded him up to 10 on the kill column, and that's a performance we needed to see from Captain Twig. Recently been a little bit more iffy in the jungle, a little bit more here or there, hot and cold. This is one where we see some consistency and the ability to absolutely dominate the map. 10-1, can only sing his praises.
Yeah, fantastic from Captain Twig, especially on the Lancelot, because upon first release, it was a cornerstone pick for Captain Twig. Then fell into a pit of kind of inconsistency there for a little while, now starting to pick it back up. This is a pretty big win for the Camelot Kings down the stretch here. Yes, we've talked about standings, top 2, things like that. But really, it's a team that made some changes because they felt like they didn't have the consistency and a lot of the results weren't as convincing as they were hoping for. And so now you get a 2-0. You get a tumultuous game 1 and a pretty clean game 2 outside of Panatom going a bit crazy. This is the type of win that real momentum can get built off of for the rest of the year for the Kings.
And I think it's also a point of validation for them, right?
Yeah.
You're going into the Worlds phase. It's ending the entirety of the year, and you make a massive change to your roster, picking up Yarkor. Game 1, 73,000 damage.
Yep.
Game 2, solid as well. I think they can feel confident in that addition to their team.
Yeah, Yark has felt right at home in the last few sets that we've seen them play. Camelot Kings, they get a big one here. Leviathan's win streak is over. Maybe a new one begins for the Camelot Kings. 2-0 to the Kings over the Leviathans. That's it for Miff, and I will head back to the desk to break this one down.
And again, another fun one to watch, although for entirely different reasons than game number 1. Game number 1, bouncing back and forth for 50 minutes, a lot of fun defenses that come out in that one. This one, maybe some fun defenses, honestly, if that's what you want to call them. Very early on, aggression from the Leviathans, met with triple kill, and then another triple kill by Twig. I think if you're looking at the jungler for the Kings here, there's a lot to talk about in that game, but Twig immediately came to my mind.
Yeah, I think Twig on the Lancelot had the performance we've been expecting from him for a while. You know, we were wondering when it was going to come back. I think this Lancelot pick has been working very well for him as well.
Yeah.
You know, the Chronos run back from the Leviathans, we were wondering, is he allowed to get late game? Is it going to be as destructive as it was? Turns out no. I mean, he blinked it, almost one-shot BMT, and then just got deleted. There was no time for a rewind, and that was sort of what I was talking about. This Chronos pick, if you can't get that rewind off, you lose a ton of its value, and I think the Camelot Kings were able to deal with it pretty well. And I thought their comp with all these cripples would be able to deal with Panatom as well, but that Susano was running wild for a bit.
Yeah, for a little while, but eventually,
bit.
yeah, they were able to dampen it.
Yeah.
Although there was a point, I remember he was like, you said, if there's a defense here, this game's probably over. Or no, if the defense happens here, we're going 50 minutes. Yeah. And I saw Panatom, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. This is going to be weird. Like, I've seen this kind of play before on a Susano, on this side of the map even. Unfortunately for the Leviathans, falls a little short there. Doesn't quite get there. Meanwhile, on the other side, even though Panatom pops off, I would argue the jungler for the Kings looks impeccable in this one. The Lancelot has treated the Kings really well, and you don't just have to take it from me. We got Dave standing by with Twig for the interview.
That's right, Captain Twig. Big plays in game number 2, but I want to rewind first, Twig, to game number 1 here. It goes 50-something minutes, chaotic. funneling a lot of pressure towards Zapman early. Eventually, Shinto starts to come online. Does that feel like kind of a cornerstone win? You know, you bring in Yarkor, big chaotic 50-minute game. Does that one feel like a big momentum builder, specifically game one for the Kings?
100%. I mean, a big problem we had was maybe the communication towards the dual lane and maybe a lack of aggression. And it feels good that Jock can come in and on the first week, we're kind of fixing that issue that maybe we had. So yeah, huge momentum on Jock that game.
And for you specifically, now we'll turn to game two, because Panatom gets off to an incredible start there in game two. Does that put some more pressure on you, do you think, to step up? You see Panatom getting a couple kills going over in solo lane. Do you suddenly feel more pressure as a jungler to make something happen on the map?
100%, and even to go back to game one, I mean, I've kind of been going through about a month slump lately, having a lot of tough games, a lot of games where I'm literally the worst player in the game of the 10 players. In terms of confidence, there's nothing better. Even in game one, I think I soloed the Gilgamesh with the Fire Giant, and for me, that's just a huge confidence booster. Panatom is maybe the best player in the league from my account, so to solo him the first game, get that confidence, go into game two, and just know I can have that confidence in myself. I think it was a big day for me.
Yeah, agreed. Big day for you. Big day for the Camelot Kings in its entirety. Do you take any pride in ending now the big win streak that the Leviathans were on? They set the SPL win streak record. Is there a little something extra for you guys ending the big win streak?
Not particularly. I don't have any resentment towards the Leviathans. I am, just so glad to beat a team of the quality of the Leviathans. It's big for us, and we needed that. So, yeah, super happy, but no resentment to care about.
Yeah, fair enough. They're on a win streak. That means they're a really good team. You 2-0'd them. That means you guys are a really good team as well. Best of luck in the rest of your phase. Thanks for your time. We'll go back to the desk to close this one out.
And I think you can hear it there, right? Proud, excited with the changes that they've made. Feels really good for the Kings to be able to get a win like this one. Feels, I want to say maybe not the worst case scenario. I think we talked about this for the Leviathans coming into this. Losing means losing that win streak, which I admit I was a little excited to see how far they could push it. Evidently, not as far as maybe we would have thought, but it doesn't really matter. If you're looking at the Kings, Trelly, you're looking at a team that is now one step closer to potentially snatching second place away from the Dragons. Again, for that to happen, Kings have to win both, Dragons have to lose both of the remaining matchups. Kings won one of those two, so now they only have one left. Two, fingers crossed, I guess, for the Kings to have the Dragons lose. And same thing can be said for the Valkyries if you look at that next step, but we can look into that in just a little bit. Instead, let's watch this from the get-go. This was maybe, this was a very defining moment in my eyes for this game. That things weren't going to go as well for the Leviathans as maybe we would have thought.
Yeah, I would say so as well. When you see the early triple kill from Twig, I mean, and that's the thing, Panatom was already off to a great start as well. It was a massive boost, and I think in the mental, and I think Twig, very candid and honest. Panatom, I guess in his mind, one of the best players in the league. And I think, Panatom backs that up time and time again. And being able to not only, it was a constant battle of 1v1s. The Ratatosker and the Gilgamesh were looking for each other in the jungle. And it's not easy to win that 1v1. But coming into this matchup with that same level of confidence, I think helped out his gameplay. And I also tend to echo what he was talking about, where they needed this win because the Kings, after making a roster swap like that, this close to the road to Worlds. I mean, it's getting to crunch time, right?
Yeah.
Being able to come down and shut down the win streak of the Leviathans and come out swinging like that, certainly a mental boost that I'm sure they're all pretty excited about.
And I think, like you said, that's maybe the bigger deal, right? You come in, you get a win against the Warriors. It was a hard-fought win yesterday. Then you get this win against the #1 seed, a team that has not lost since week #1 in the Leviathans. And despite an 8-3-1 performance from Panatom, you're able to put up a lot, and that's because Twig pops off just as hard, if not, honestly, a little harder because of the damage that comes through. I mean, triple kills galore. If you're looking at not just a win for the team, but even, as he said in the interview, being in a slump, trying to find out, and I guess really reclaim your identity in a way, I think Twig has kind of stamped his approval back onto this one.
I don't like that Mifflin called me out for saying that Zap wasn't going to go the build.
Yeah.
And then if Wrong-You hit one more Rising Dawn, he would have outdamaged Zapman that game. So whether or not I was right it doesn't matter. The data backed it up.
Yeah.
It was an Ishtar thing, probably shouldn't have been a certain thing, but I digress. I think we were talking again about the Leviathans. Are they peaking at the right times? You know, sometimes going into Worlds with this massive win streak can be a little bit on the mental.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a positive for both of these teams. Leviathans were humbled going into that situation, so they know what adaptations they need to make.
Yeah, maybe a necessary loss, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to peak too soon. You don't want to peak too late. You want to get right at the right time. Sometimes you need to get smacked down once just to kind of spark that fire.
Yeah,
there
exactly.
we go. I figured out the word. Now we can look at the schedule for today. Again, we just watched a 2-0. Honestly, kind of surprised it was a 2-0 from the Kings over the Leviathans. I thought for sure this one was going to go 3, especially after yesterday. All 9 games played on a Thursday. And now up next will be the Valkyries and the Dragons. Dragons will also start tomorrow. Leviathans will see play the Warriors. And then a triple header there on Sunday starting at 11 for those of you who want to tune in. Tomorrow will start around the same time today did, 1 p.m. And now we can talk about the standings implications, because the Kings have now stepped up one closer to the Dragons. Now, the Dragons have the head-to-head between these two teams. That's what matters most. You can see they're 9-4 and 9-3 respectively between the Kings and the Dragons. If the Kings are able to win both and the Dragons lose both, then you'll have a 10-4 Kings and a 9-5 Dragons. And that is the only way the Kings can jump that spot. Why are top 2 important? Well, you only have to play and win, specifically. You have to win one set while you are at the Phase 3 playoffs to guarantee a spot in the quarterfinals for Worlds. So the Kings would really like that. Otherwise, it's a little more work for them. The Dragons, of course, have their opportunity coming up next as they play the Valkyries, who are also in a position to swap if the Valkyries win this, and it is a must-win for this to happen. If they can beat the Dragons right here, they're one step closer to potentially knocking the Bolts out of 6th and taking that spot away from them. That also relies on the Bolts losing tomorrow and the Bolts losing to the Valkyries on Sunday. So the Dragons have a chance to upset 2 teams right here, right now. They can ruin the Kings' dreams and the Valkyries' dreams with 1 win, and sometimes that's all it takes. And Shelly, who knows? I mean, I think that there's going to be a fire under the Valkyries for this one. I think we're in for an interesting set.
I would say so, but now you've also given them so much power. They can just ruin
They
dreams.
can ruin. That's 10 people that they can just really upset.
Yeah. And them being half
And that's
of those,
ignoring coaches.
Yeah, that's 12 people total that they could just ruin their chances for. But, I mean, I think you're right. They've been riding the Valks to 6 train. I'm sure they're excited for this one. I'm hyped for it.
Wait, the Valks have been riding the Valks to 6 train, or
Yeah.
the Dragons have?
No, the Valks have
Okay,
been.
I thought you were saying the Dragons have
No,
been
I'm
riding
talking about the Valks should be going into this hyped.
Yeah, they need to, because they are going to need this win. It's going to be fun to watch. Again, if the Valkyries are able to do it, things will go great for them. If the Dragons do it, they seal 2nd. We'll see what happens right after this quick break.